Yeah, that's my pastor.
So, you do have two?
Not comfortable at all. Good evening. Being 7 p.m., I'll call to order the McHenry County Board regular meeting of February 21st, 2023. And Mr. Hendricks will lead us in the pledge today.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And for our invocation this evening, we have Pastor Larry Tiemann from Emmanuel Lutheran Church in Crystal Lake.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, tonight we seek your sovereign blessing on our nation, our state, our county, our families, and our neighborhoods. Lord, forgive us for all of our shortcomings and for the times when we have failed you and thought only of our own self-interests over the needs of others. Humble our hearts that we might hear your voice and not just our own. Draw us back to your love that we might have a compassionate and giving heart toward those around us. Lord, guard the hearts and minds of those elected to serve, that they might be faithful to you, and let the peace of your presence surround them each and every day. Grant them wisdom, that they may see what is good and honorable and just, not only for this county, but for all the well-being of all of its people. Rid them of judgment, condemnation, and pride, and fill them with the spirit of grace, mercy, and hope. Hold all of us in the public eye to a higher calling, that we will carefully observe your commandments and be a nation under God with liberty and justice for all. To you, O Lord, be the glory for all the goodness and all the blessings that come our way. In your precious name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. Okay, clerk, could you call the roll, please?
Altoff.
I'm here.
In the hall.
Campbell. Gadamoller. Greeno. Hendricks. Kaminsky. Kearns. Kunkel. Meshes. Ness. Reinert. Sager. Shorten. Scala. Smith. Van Hoff. Von Bergen. Wegner. 17 present.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to allow Ms. Altoff to attend remotely. Ms. Campbell, seconded by Ms. Von Bergen. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Ayes have it. Having a quorum, we'll move on to item number 5. I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda. Mr. Scala, seconded by Ms. Meshes. All in favor say aye. Aye. Against? The ayes have it. And then I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of previous meetings. Mr. Gadamoller, seconded by Ms. Meshes. All in favor say aye. Aye. Against? And the ayes have it. Moving on to my comments. Good evening. I have a number of items to share with you before we move on to tonight's agenda. On Wednesday, February 8th, Pete and I accompanied a delegation from McHenry County Council of Governments to Springfield for a 2-day visit with state lawmakers and officials. Our group included Ringwood Village President Rick Mack, Cary Mayor Mark Kounick, Algonquin Village President Debbie Sosine, Woodstock Mayor Mike Turner, and City Manager Roscoe Stelford, Crystal Lake Mayor Haig Halibian, and Lakewood Village President David Stavropoulos, and Village Manager Gene Heckman, and Police Chief Mike Roth as well. The legislators and staff that we met with included House Deputy Majority Leader Jihan Gordon Booth, Representative Suzanne Ness, House Republican Leader Tony McCombie, Reps. Steve Reich and Joe Sosnowski, Senate President Don Harmon, Senate Republican Leader John Curran, and Senators Dave Severson and Don DeWitt, as well as officials with the Governor's Office, the Comptroller's Office, and Illinois Secretary of Transportation Omar Osman. It was a busy couple of days. I'd like to thank County Coordinator Shaylin Daigle, as well as Joyce Narduli, President and CEO of Joyce Narduli Government Relations, for putting this trip together. Early last week, County Administrator Pete Austin and I also had the opportunity to travel to Washington, D.C. to attend the National Association of Counties Legislative Conference. During the conference, I attended NACO's Summit on Mental Health Solutions, as well as broadband information sessions. And I found them both to be very informative and eye-opening. We networked with numerous county leaders from across the nation, learning about best practices and how they spent their COVID relief funding through the American Rescue Plan Act. Despite all the projects and programs we've heard about, I'm still convinced that our McHenry County initiative was the most unique, innovative, and effective way to spend ARPA dollars. And on that note, I'm pleased to report that on Tuesday, McHenry County got a Valentine of sorts from the U.S. Department of the Treasury. It put out a news release that highlighted our Advanced McHenry County program as an example of transformational and wise investments of American Rescue Plan Act funding. Of more than 3,200 counties in the United States, we were one of 17 that were singled out by the Treasury Department for a job well done. So let me echo that sentiment to the county board, our county staff, and to the applicants who came forward with thoughtful and impactful proposals. A job well done. And that concludes my remarks for this evening. We'll move on to members' comments. Do any members have comments tonight? Mr. Reinert.
Yes, I just wanted to just point a few things out to my fellow board members that I think that we're kind of veering off our path of following the Roberts rules, where they suggest to avoid using a person's name in a debate. I know the first few meetings I was in debate, my name was mentioned and called out by someone that didn't agree with me, and I was surprised because I'm rarely wrong, of course, but the last two meetings, I noticed it quite a bit with all of our other board meetings, especially that we're on some heated topics, and I would remind everyone that it truly is not protocol for Robert's rules to hold a meeting and debate and call each other out, because we're just going to make enemies out of each other. And I fear that we're going to do that more and more if we don't exercise a little caution. So that's my comments for tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Reinert. Ms. Wagner?
Thank you. First off, I want to apologize for not being here last Thursday morning. I had a death in the family and I was traveling out of state. But secondly, I have received comments from members of the public, and I also watched the video yesterday, and the members of the public were concerned about the lack of attention that the county board members were giving during public comment. So I just want to remind the county board members to look at the people who are giving public comment. This is not easy for them. They're coming before a government body, and it can be intimidating, so I think we should give them the courtesy of listening. So I don't mean to admonish, just wanted to relay something that somebody told me. I also have a statement to read. I'm reading a statement provided by the Highland Park Mayor Nancy Rodering. Mayor Rodering spoke to us last week during the Committee of the Whole and asked that I share her perspective this evening, and I hope I do it justice. Good evening, McHenry County Board. On July 4th, 2022, like so many of you, our community was fully celebrating our patriotism at our 4th of July parade. At 10:14 a.m., our joy was shattered by one young man shooting 83 rounds in under 1 minute from a legally obtained weapon designed to devastate as many human bodies as quickly as possible. Until a mass shooting arrives in your front yard, you really don't understand the magnitude of its devastation. The U.S. Department of Justice, Office for Victims of Crime, tells us that the impact of this 1-minute event will last decades, if not lifetimes. It's incomprehensible. 7 months later, we remember the 7 individuals who were taken too soon, and we keep the 4 dozen injured, so many still trying to recover from devastating wounds, and their families in our thoughts. Highland Park's story includes 8-year-old Cooper Roberts, who went to the 4th of July parade with his family, and as a result missed the beginning of 3rd grade because he was hospitalized, trying to recover from a severed spinal cord, shredded esophagus and liver, and a partially collapsed lung. Learning about living forevermore in a wheelchair with PTSD, his statement on his first day back to school, "If I hadn't been shot, if I hadn't been paralyzed, if I hadn't been in a wheelchair, it would have been the perfect first day of school." 8 years old. It includes 2-year-old Aiden McCarthy, who is still asking for his mom and dad, both of whom died shielding their only child during a family celebration of freedom. Imagine what it's like to see a photo circulating on social media and receiving text messages with a photo of an unaccompanied toddler covered in blood with a message asking if anybody knows him. That horrible moment when you imagine the worst and then learn it's true. It includes the Toledo family, all 17 of them, who directly experienced what happened to their grandfather's head when he was hit by a high-velocity gunshot, many still dealing with the painful shrapnel that may stay in their bodies for the rest of their lives. This is a uniquely American problem. Shooters using assault weapons and large-capacity magazines regularly and randomly wreak terror and carnage through our nation. Shooters strike churches, grocery stores, movie theaters, concerts, school, and main streets. It's not only the loss of life, but the loss of living life freely that's impacted. Among America's mayors, there's the common refrain of, "Not if, but when," a mass shooting will come to our communities. I cannot sufficiently convey to you the horrible, sick feeling of hearing that a mass shooting has occurred in your community. I recognize that restricting access to assault weapons does not stop all gun violence, but banning combat weapons is one common sense step proven to be effective at curbing gun deaths, as shown by the 10-year federal assault weapons ban that expired in 2004. During that 10 years, our nation experienced a 70% drop in mass shooting-related deaths. While my town is next door to Lake County, we know that a single county or city cannot protect its residents from mass shooting because none of us are islands. But if we can make it that much harder for someone intent on committing an instantaneous killing spree to obtain a weapon with the impact and speed of the one used in my community, we've taken a step in the right direction. The Illinois General Assembly passed the Assault Weapons Ban, Protect Illinois' Community Act. Opposing the law sends a message that it's more important to allow public access to combat weapons than to protect our human right to live freely from random carnage. That profits matter more than lives, that McHenry County will only comply with the law that it likes, undermining the stability of a society based on a common set of rules and procedures. Worse, it invites the non-law-abiding citizens to find refuge here. It's important to note, after his mass shooting, the Highland Park shooter drove 2.5 hours to Madison, Wisconsin, by his own admission, contemplating a second mass shooting. He could have just as easily driven here to McHenry County. Just take a moment and think about where you were the last 4th of July, who you were with, and you could have been next. This debate isn't whether we're burdening lawful gun owners with new regulations. Prior assault weapon ban repeatedly have been deemed to be constitutional as recently as last Friday. A federal judge in the United States District Court for the Northern District of Illinois upheld the Illinois assault weapon ban as constitutional in the case of Robert Bevis et al. Versus City of Naperville. According to Gallup, most Americans support a ban on assault weapons. They recognize the very real threat these weapons pose to our daily lives. I urge you, do not make assumptions about your constituents. Please uphold the law and prioritize the public safety of our county. Statement from Nancy Rodering, Mayor of Highland Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wegner. Ms. Ness?
I want to say that since December, our meetings have been populated by the residents of our county who have come before us to share their opinions and their desires with us, your elected county board members. either you want us to vote for or against this resolution. I want to tell you that it pleases me because democracy is watered by the voices of the people who live in their country. Whether we agree with you or disagree with you, the very public act of standing up is important. At some point, we will cast votes tonight. Some of you will celebrate and some of you will not. That's the way it goes. At the end of the debate, the vote is cast, the decision is made, and then we go home and we start over the next day in a reasonable, calm, and civil manner, promoting democracy in our everyday lives. You can count on me to listen to you, all of you, fully listen to you, to be present to your fears and your concerns and your ideas. I will do that during public comment. I know what it's like to stand before a crowd and speak out your opinion. You are all courageous and to be acknowledged for doing that. I thank you for coming before us, before strangers, for standing up for something that you believe in even if others don't. That's the backbone of how this government works. And I'm glad you're here tonight. And I thank you for showing up, all of you. And I leave you with this. The 14th century mystic, I don't know, 14th, 15th, I don't know, an old guy, he was an old guy, said, Meister Eckhart said, if the only prayer we ever pray is thank you, it would be enough. So thank you all for being here tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Ness. Any further member comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to special recognition. I'll entertain a motion to approve the Emergency Management Volunteer Award. Ms. Greeno, seconded by Mr. Gottemoller, and Mr. Shorten will read the proclamation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would first like to thank the Emergency Management Agency in McHenry County. I attended the weather spotter training, I think it was the Tuesday before last, at the McHenry County Board of Health. I didn't really realize the number of volunteers that were involved in tracking the weather and severe storms that take place here. Member Campbell was there as well. So we're now official weather spotters. And but what's more remarkable to me is the folks' names here I'm going to read here have volunteered their time in the county as part of the McHenry County Emergency Management Agency. So I'll go to the proclamation. On behalf of the President of the United States, the McHenry County Emergency Management Agency would like to present the President's Volunteer Service Award to 11 of its volunteers for their tireless efforts and personal hours worked in their community in 2022. We have two sets of awards that are going out. The first one is going for the President's Volunteer Service Lifetime Award, which is for 4,000 or more hours, and that goes to James Raspopo. And then we have the President's Volunteer Service Bronze Award, which is for 100 to 249 annual hours, and that's being awarded to Kurt Clifford, John Dewey, Ricardo Garcia, Eduardo Jaramillo, Ellen Lubbo, Kenneth Mattis, Jeff Oland, Bill Peckett, Daniel Weigel, and John Zells. Commitment and dedication, along with the desire to serve, are part of what makes a volunteer great. These individuals have demonstrated the innate ability to assist their government and its residents in time of disaster and emergency. We are indebted to each for their service. Dated Woodstock, Illinois, this 21st day of February, AD 2023.
Okay, next I'll entertain a motion to approve the proclamation recognizing February National Black History Month in McHenry County. Mr. Gottemoller, seconded by Ms. Greeno. Ms. Van Hoff?
Yes. Well, many of you are aware that we were going to vote on this proclamation tonight. I'm just very pleased that we are doing this, and we have gone through, as they say, several drafts, and I believe we've come up with a proclamation that we all can agree on and support. I believe this is something that is really historic for McHenry County, and I thank you, Chairman Bueller, for being patient with us as we worked out a version that I believe will please all our members. So I would like to make a motion to replace the proclamation that's in your packet with the one that I'm going to read to you tonight. So I need to make that motion and get a
Second, Mr. Kearns.
Okay.
And discussion, did you want to? I mean, all the board members have this on their table, so.
Yes, you all should have a copy of this proclamation that I am referring to. And the last paragraph begins, "Be it further resolved." I know you may have more than one in your packet, so this is the one that we're talking about.
Okay. So discussion, Mr. Gottemoller?
I have no objection. I would change my motion to adopt this.
Pardon me?
I would change my motion to adopt the revised one.
Okay,
I don't know if that's acceptable, but that would, it would.
yes. Ms. Greeno?
I would like the motion to remain with the one that was sent to us by the county. It was accurate and uplifting and accurate.
Okay, so. Okay, so Mr. Scala seconds, Joe's including the text that Ms. Friendly amendment, yeah. Any other discussion? Ms. Van Hoff's proposed change to replace the text of the posted resolution or proclamation to what she's provided the county board members. Okay, seeing no further discussion, Ms. Van Hoff, would you like to read the proclamation?
Yes. Whereas Black History Month is a time for all Americans to reflect on and celebrate the many achievements and contributions made by African Americans to our community and our nation, and whereas during Black History Month, we remember the stories and teachings of those who took a stance against prejudice to build lives of dignity and opportunity and advance the cause of civil rights, and whereas African Americans have made valuable and lasting contributions to economic, cultural, spiritual, and political development, and whereas African Americans have achieved exceptional success in all aspects of society, including business, education, politics, science, and in the arts, and whereas America's greatness is a testament to generations of courageous individuals who, in the face of uncomfortable truths, accepted that the work of perfecting our nation is unending and strive to expand the reach of freedom to all. And whereas McHenry County recognizes diversity as a source of pride for our community and continues our efforts to include every level of American society, of all races and backgrounds, to contribute to our democracy and strengthen our communities, culture, and economy. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the McHenry County Board proclaims February 2023 Black History Month. Be it further resolved that this county board encourages residents to use Black History Month as an opportunity to reflect on and share the significant contributions, successes, and challenges of African Americans throughout history to strengthen our collective resolve to live up to the ideals of freedom, equality, and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Van Hoff. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Against?
Aye.
The ayes have it. And we'll move on to zoning petitions. Do any members have an item they'd like removed from the zoning consent agenda? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the zoning consent agenda. Mr. Smith, seconded by Ms. Campbell. Clerk, could you open the voting, please? Voting is open. Have all voted who wish? Yeah, could you call
Ms.
roll?
Altoff?
Yes?
Okay, motion carries. We will move on to public comment. Please remember, according to board's rules, that this is your opportunity to directly address the county board. Any person wishing to address the county board on any questions shall be provided not more than 3 minutes at the time allotted. If the red light comes on in front of me, you will be asked to please summarize your comments. There is also a 30-minute limit, which could be extended on board motion. Due to the volume of comments expected this evening and in the interest of time, if a comment preceding yours mentions something that you are going to say, I respectfully ask that you consider not repeating what others have already stated. And finally, in the spirit of conducting an orderly and efficient meeting, I request that you refrain from applause during public comments. I will call out names and we will stage over to my left of the podium here. I am not necessarily going to call your names in the order that you signed up because we have some people that want to speak on a different topic, and I'm going to call them first, and then we'll move on through the list. So first to speak today will be Dean Fritz, followed by Sally Kazanis.
Good evening. My name is Dean Fritz, and I'm here to follow up with you regarding the comments I made at your January meeting. I wish to thank the 4 board members who reached out to me after my public comments at that meeting and my follow-up email the next day. Those interactions led me to contact the chief of the Civil Division of the McHenry County State's Attorney's Office, Norm Vinton, and then following that, the McHenry County Sheriff, Rob Tatelman. As a result of that, I discovered that there is a McHenry County nuisance noise ordinance that was passed on October 16th, 2018, became effective December 15th, 2018. I also learned from Norm Vinton that from then until now, there has never been any warnings or notices of violation issued. So it has never been used, and based on my experiences over the past year, I'm not surprised by that at all. When I asked questions about the current ordinance, Norm Vinton told me that it was confusing, and I will send that to you. I'll follow up this presentation with an email to you tomorrow. So after reading and asking questions about the current ordinance, from a homeowner-landowner's perspective, it falls very short of my expectations and some of my neighbors. To be fair to some of my neighbors, and allow me to be cynical for a moment, it appears to some that the current ordinance was written to be confusing and incomplete on purpose. In 2022, I was able to find a draft McHenry County noise ordinance, and I found that it was metadata dated November 22nd, 2017, so it appears to be the precursor of the current ordinance, which has much more detail in it than the current one. And I feel that draft was a much better document for a number of reasons. I will also send that to you. In my attempts to resolve this issue directly with my neighbor last year, I was told that they had talked to someone at the county, they wouldn't tell me who, I did ask, and that their understanding was that they could have as many loud parties events on their property all night long if they wanted to. And based on my discussions with county personnel last year, I can understand how they could come to that conclusion. While I'm still trying to establish some rapport relationship with my neighbor, by not having a clearly written, effective ordinance, there is no standard as to what is acceptable behavior is and/or what the consequences are for breaching it. Therefore, while some progress has been made on this issue, I do not feel it has been completed. And my reason for pursuing this is so that in the future, no one else has to expend so much time and effort just to be able to be undisturbed and have the quiet enjoyment of their property. I want to thank you in advance for making and taking the time to look into this, and I will again follow up with each of you after this meeting with an email. Thank you.
Sally Kazanis, followed by Abby Busio, is it? First on the list?
Hi, I am Sally Kazanis, and I am here also for this noise ordinance. I have a taping of a couple of years ago where we're sitting outside, and we live approximately 1,400 feet from our neighbors with this whole noise thing going on. It is overly loud and brightly lit during these events almost every weekend from spring to fall, from into the wee hours of the morning. I am here with the other neighbors regarding this ordinance, the noise ordinance. A couple of us asked for your help at the last board meeting, something that should be clear-cut, and yet the ordinance seems to be confusing to say the least. We have called the sheriff one Saturday night around 10:30, and we were told there wasn't anything he could do, and it was our problem. We as the neighbors are told to talk with this neighbor, and we have on numerous occasions, especially Dean, who just talked, to no avail. We pay our real estate taxes, and we thought we were part of the McHenry County community, where we should be able to enjoy our property like everybody else residing in this county. Not the case. Why we are back again tonight to help you understand this is an issue. Whether it affects 20 people, 100, or 1,000 residents, just because we are unincorporated doesn't mean we don't matter. We are frustrated. Warm weather is around the corner, and once again, the peace we once had will be gone until about November. How would you feel if your neighbor had loud music and strobe lights till 2 or 1 a.m. in the morning, especially on the weekends? Closed windows do not help. All we wish to do is to enjoy our homes as much as others do. Yes, there is an existing nuisance noise ordinance, which apparently needs to be made clearer and enforceable. Thank you for taking our nuisance noise issue, where a person commits the offense of nuisance noise when they knowingly make any noise in such unreasonable manner as to alarm or disturb another and to provide a breach of the peace. Thanks for taking that to heart, because that is part of the ordinance that I took. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Abby, is it Busio? Apologize for that. Followed by Susan Grossinger and Prudence Sullivan. Who's passing?
She was going to allocate her time to me.
Okay, go ahead. So 6.
My name is Abby Brosio, and I am a mother, a middle school science teacher in McHenry County, and a survivor of the mass shooting at the Highland Park 4th of July parade this summer. I attended the parade in Highland Park with my 1- and 3-year-old, my mother and father-in-law, because my husband is the manager of Gearhead Outfitters, a store adjacent to the roof where the shooter aimed at the families below. This is a chilling picture found on my mother-in-law's phone of my husband holding my 1-year-old daughter just 5 minutes before the shooter appeared on the roof in this picture. Imagine yourself with your family here enjoying one of the first celebrations post-pandemic. Imagine looking around and trying to find out where the sound was coming from and witnessing with your own 2 eyes the shooter aiming a gun at your family from above. Imagine leaving the hospital with your discharge papers reading gunshot wound. Imagine every day after trying to recount all the details, trying to place every person in your family, and trying to understand how we all could have been so perfectly placed to avoid extensive injury or death. Imagine the worry you might feel for your husband that manned the door to his store during and after the incident. Imagine watching your parents, wife, and children running for their lives. Imagine the horror of seeing bodies on the ground, the blood, the tree branches hanging, the countless wounded victims. Now imagine having to return to this scene every day. Imagine how many people came into his store asking questions about what he saw and where the bodies were. Imagine being my 3-year-old son, being told that you're going to a parade just like Elmo's Furry Red Monster Parade. Imagine enjoying the music of the marching band. Imagine the percussive sounds of joyous drums turning into loud percussive bangs, hearing the gut-wrenching screams, and running with your grandma towards your daddy's store. Imagine your grandma falling and scooping you underneath her to crawl into the store while you are being thrown around like a rag doll, unsure of why. Imagine sitting in the basement of your daddy's store while your grandma and mommy shake and cry as your grandma checks your mommy's back and sees blood. My son could talk your ear off, but that day in the basement of that store, my son sat silently, wide-eyed, trying to process why all of the adults were so upset. Imagine you are a 3-year-old that has been sitting in the basement for hours and you have to go to the bathroom. As your mommy walks you to the bathroom, the SWAT team enters the basement with guns, yelling to clear the maze of hallways because the shooter was still on the loose. My son was scared of police officers for months after this. He would ask my husband, is that a good cop or a bad cop? Imagine you are me. Imagine that just a month before this happened to you, you heard of the horrifying shooting that claimed 21 lives, 19 of them being just 10 and 11-year-olds. Imagine walking into school the next day, your very last day of school, and having to look at your own students and feeling compelled to apologize that the adults haven't figured out how to keep them safe yet. Imagine that just a month later, after years of being convinced it would happen to you at school, you experienced the horror of a mass shooting while out with your family. Imagine working through all of that without breaking down in front of your children that don't understand what happened to them. Imagine working through all of it while standing in front of 12 and 13-year-olds, just meeting their teacher for the first time as she cries in front of the class recounting that day to warn them about the panic attacks she might have. Imagine seeing your students from the previous year and having them cry in your arms, just happy to see you alive. For the first 2 months of school, I had panic attacks often in front of my students. My worst panic attack happened on the day of our first lockdown drill. Imagining my students reenacting the most horrific thing that's ever happened in my life and posing the what-if questions as if anticipating when and not if it would happen to them absolutely broke me. This was the day I questioned whether I should be in front of a classroom teaching, whether it was responsible. And if you knew me and knew that I love my students and refer to them as my kids, you would know how absolutely devastating this realization was for me. Just imagine that. But imagine no longer knowing yourself as well. Imagine not being able to anticipate what might trigger you. Imagine being unable to hold yourself together in front of people. Imagine mourning the life you once knew. Imagine how lonely it is. Friends don't check on you because they fear asking about or saying something that might upset you. So instead, they just don't. I'm navigating a whole new life and learning a whole new me, and it's so incredibly lonely. Imagine the survivor's guilt. Every holiday that they are not there, but I am. Seeing my family grow, but they won't. So that's why I put myself in positions like these, to speak in hopes that my story will make a difference because I still have a voice. So I work through the panic attacks to share my story because one day my children will ask what I did to make a difference and I can say everything that I could have. So I can look at my students and encourage them to change the world because I tried to. Imagine re-traumatizing yourself over and over in an effort to initiate change. Imagine. I can understand that it's hard to imagine. It's hard to imagine the truly unimaginable happening to you or someone you love. And I know this for sure. If you change nothing, nothing will change. And if that is the case, if we choose to change nothing, I fear that you too will be able to imagine the unimaginable because the risk of it happening to you grows every day that we choose to do nothing. And I want so badly to be the voice that tells you how unimaginable it will be so that maybe you won't have to experience it yourselves. And I want to be the last of this group of survivors of gun violence. But if we choose to change nothing and you find yourself in a lonely place like I have, if the unimaginable happens to you and changes your mind, I hope that you'll reach out to me so you won't feel so alone. Imagine prioritizing our lives and the lives of our children over the existence of these weapons. Imagine instead if we choose change. Thank you.
Susan Grossinger, followed by Doug Watikas and Dan Kozarski.
Thank you. I actually didn't know about any of this that was going on until I heard a report on ABC News that the McHenry County Board was going to be possibly passing or talking about a resolution. I'm really not here to talk about whether I support, HB 5471 or not. I'm really here because I want to ask you all a question. Now that you've deemed yourselves constitutional experts who have determined you have the power to enforce your definition, you have of the Constitution, I can assume that this means those of us who think we're just as smart as you have the right to determine our actions based on our own interpretation of the Constitution. If so, then I guess we don't need the courts anymore. If we all can decide on our own individually, it's really appalling that people who claim to love our country can trash our founding principles of the separation of power by ignoring what the founding fathers implemented, that the Constitution, and whether something is constitutional, is to be interpreted by our courts. We have had our state's attorney already file a lawsuit, okay? They are doing their job. That's the way it's supposed to be done, is to go to through the courts and decide the matter. It is not your role, and it has nothing to do with this governing body. It really just kind of seems like grandstanding. There is no reason for this resolution. Let the courts do their job, and if it is declared unconstitutional, then we will all abide by that. But I'm here just because I don't understand why we're all here.
Doug Watikas, is it?
Yes, sir.
Followed by Dan Kozarski and Patty Hand.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Board, thank you. So I heard earlier that this is unique to the United States, and that is because we have a Second Amendment unique to this country, and I'm very thankful for that. But guns are not evil because it is incapable of intent. However, people willing to commit a heinous act will seek out any means necessary to carry out that act, whether it is with a gun, a box truck like the one used in Oklahoma City bombing, killing 168 people and injuring almost 700. Or the one used in France during a parade to run down families, killing 84 people. Or an automobile used to mow down another parade in Waukesha, Wisconsin. Or the rental truck used to run over multiple bicyclists on the bike path in New York, killing 8 people. Or even a commercial airplane that was used to kill 2,977 people on 9/11. We are attempting to pass judgment on the lawful as a result of the despicable acts of the lawless, who have no regard for life, born or unborn. People are using emotion to justify their position because of what happened in Highland Park. Many laws already in place to prevent what happened in Highland Park were broken, which is another inconvenient truth that refutes the agenda of the gun control groups. Not to mention, in the last 24 hours, there were at least 5 multiple victim stabbings in the U.S. alone. It is my hope that nobody in this room will ever willfully give up their liberties and freedoms under the guise of more security and less scrutiny. Personally, I am not willing to give up any of my God-given liberties or freedoms afforded to me by the United States Constitution for the false promise of more comfort. Given enough time, comfort will not be found because liberty and freedom will no longer prevail. Here we are fighting over a constitutional right, and a right that does not say we should put our personal belongings on a public registry for criminals to see. All this while our citizens are addicted to drugs, antidepressants in order to cope, while the government deemed churches non-essential, where faith, hope, and love can all be found, and the only things that can truly help heal a hurting nation. Our society is broken, and the farther we move away from God, the closer we get to societal de-evolution. Right now, we have a McHenry County schools teaching 12 and 13-year-olds an 8th grade science class about anal sex, pornographic books in school libraries, and the school administration thinks this is normal, and people laugh, which is pretty sick. Shame on us and parents for allowing this nonsense, but here we fight. And I'll end with this. In 2020, over 620,000 potential teachers, scientists, doctors, lawyers, artists, musicians, humanitarians, politicians, children, grandchildren, teenagers.
Summarize your comments, please.
Yes, sir. parents, grandmas, and grandpas all had their lives taken away from them by sucking them through a tube and discarded as a mass of little people in a biohazard bag to be incinerated and thrown away as an inconvenience, also known as abortion. Where are our cries for them? Where is our outrage? Thank you.
Mr. Please. Is it Lazarski or?
Yeah, it's Lazarski.
Apologize for that.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board, the audience. I'm just here to second what he said about, I think gun violence is a moral problem more than it is a gun problem. There is a big problem with morality in this country, and that leads to the violence that we're seeing, in my belief. Also, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. I hear a lot about this talk of democracy. Democracy, an example, is two wolves and a sheep vote for lunch. That's what democracy is. We here have a republic. We just pledge allegiance to the republic, right? So the republic is the rule of law. If you have a mob that wants to hang somebody for something they've done, the sheriff steps forward and says, wait a minute, we have a law here. And in my opinion, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Excuse me, I get a little bit, I'm not a gifted public speaker. Being that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, it's about individual rights, okay? And I'll remind the board that being that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, that it's up to the sheriff. If I was the last person that wanted to own an assault weapon, it's up to the sheriff and the law to protect me. That's what the Bill of Rights are all about. It applies to speech, it applies to the Second Amendment, the Fourth, the Fifth, and throughout. Thank you.
Patty Hand, followed by James Dixon and Tanya Franklin. James Dixon, followed by Tanya Franklin and Ed Gogol.
Good evening and thank you. I'm James Dixon, resident, and apparently there's going to be a lot of debate about the Second Amendment tonight. I want to bring up the Ninth. And for those that want to Google it, in layman's terms, it means any rights explicitly not cited in the Constitution are to come from the people, not the government. To this end, I would suggest that the county has no unilateral right to determine a position statement on the Second Amendment. Rather, you can put it to a countywide referendum with a properly worded position statement, or you could try something that's been done on a small scale across Illinois, that is, create a citizen negotiation panel. Representatives of that panel could be from different residential places like urban, rural, small town, small village. Probably it'd be good to have it chaired by one nonprofit advocate for one side or the other, representing the positions, and chaired by a professional mediator, just to keep things civil. So I would suggest that there be no decision made by this board unless the people have a say to it, or that a people's representation panel has negotiated and discussed all aspects of how that position should be taken. Thank you.
Tanya Franklin, followed by Ed Gogol and Diane Waltmeyer.
I'm going to start my comment coming off of somebody else's, honestly, and I didn't plan that. Imagine, if you will, your daughter, your sister, your aunt, your mother. July 31st, my daughter was run over in a very violent way for no reason. She did not know her attacker. She's from Chicago and she went on vacation. She was run over in front of all three of our grandkids. No law will stop that. No law. When I moved to this state from Florida in 2008, I was told I had to get a FOID card. I am under the understanding that that is unconstitutional. No other state has to have that out of all 50. There's something similar in New Jersey. Since that day, when a friend of mine got his back in 30 days and mine took 4 months to get back, I have made it my mission to empower other people to learn how to get educated and learn how to use firearms. My new mission, after 2012, when the public health department came into the school where I teach medical students, I have taught thousands of women in this county and the surrounding counties and many states. And the public health department came in to speak to us, and they told our ladies, with a gimmick of handing them a popsicle stick, that if they were raped or an attacker came after them, that they should use the popsicle stick to vomit on their attacker and urinate on them. I didn't hear the rest of what they had to say. I got up and walked out. And then I spent all my time teaching those women for free to shoot guns. My granddaughter learned to shoot at 5 years old, but she learned safety at 4. She knows when an adult is being unsafe with a gun, and all of our 14 grandchildren know the same thing. I want you to know that there are thousands of women in this county that have been through my classes, and several of you on the board and members of our community here and women in this audience today and men have taken my concealed carry classes. There are instructors in here as well. We all support our right. Changing what capacity I am allowed to have in my magazine does not change anybody's intent. I am not a criminal or a felon. If I can hold 15 rounds in my gun, I will summarize.
Summarize your
Thank you,
comments,
Mike.
please.
I am very passionate about this issue because women want to learn. We need more education, not legislation. I would ask you to support us as a sanctuary city because it is unconstitutional to pass any more laws supporting gun bans or definitions of assault weapons. There is no such thing as an assault weapon. Thank you.
Ed, please. Ed Gogol, followed by Diane Waltmeyer.
Thank you, members of the board. I have read the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment talks about a well-regulated militia. It doesn't mean that anybody can have any weapon they want. The Supreme Court, in all of the recent decisions, in the 08 decision, I should quote from the 08 decision, the court recognized the right secured by the Second Amendment is not unlimited. Our nation has long had many, many rules, regulations regarding the time, place, and manner by which people can have dangerous weapons. I support the right to firearms for personal protection. If you read the law merely being a semi-automatic does not make it an assault weapon. Merely having a detachable magazine does not make it an assault weapon. The weapons that new purchases are being banned are ones that are particularly suited if your goal in life was not self-defense, but if your goal was to spray bullets indiscriminately, killing large numbers of masses of people. This law does not impede the right of any citizen, any law-abiding citizen, to massive amounts of firepower for personal protection. It is therefore very, very wrong of this board to consider passing a resolution opposing this law. This law will help keep us safe. It will keep these incredibly deadly weapons out of the hands of psychos. It'll help protect our cops. It is something that, if you pass this resolution tonight, the next mass shooting may very well be here in McHenry County, and that would be a horrible thing. So please do not pass this resolution. Thank you.
Chris Kaspersky, followed by Terry Capel and Jamie Bosma.
Hi, my name is Chris Kaspersky. I live in Ringwood. I rise today in solidarity with everyone who, like me, has taken a solemn oath to support and defend the Constitution, the supreme law of the land. I took my oath in early 2009 when I enlisted in the U.S. Army as a combat engineer. I volunteered to go to war to find, clear, and deny the enemy from using roadside bombs, landmines, and other improvised explosive devices. I served along some ferocious freedom fighters, people that never hesitated to go into harm's way and do what others were afraid to do. I survived 3 roadside bomb blasts and many harrowing firefights, all in the name of fighting for freedom, or so we were told. In the aftermath of our disgraceful withdrawal from Afghanistan, where President Joe Biden relinquished control of more than $80 billion in actual weapons of war to our enemies, members of his party here in Illinois and across the nation are scheming to deny the purchase and punish ownership of the most commonly used firearms while disingenuously labeling them as weapons of war or assault weapons. These banned firearms are not weapons of war. They are some of the most commonly used firearms on the market. In the 2008 D.C. versus Heller case, the Supreme Court held that the Second Amendment protects arms in common use at the time for lawful purposes like self-defense. The arms that are typically possessed by law-abiding citizens for lawful purposes. Such arms are chosen by American society, not the government. This new law throws aside equal protection under the law and carves out special exceptions for highly trained individuals. One notable omission is that highly decorated, experienced, proven combat veterans are excluded. At the same time, jailers, private security, and even brand new military recruits are all included. After a generation of at war, this is how we are welcomed home. I implore you to do the right thing, stand behind our sheriff and state's attorney, and proclaim that our rights will not be stripped away by a tyrannical majority. I echo President Eisenhower's quote that I hate war as only a soldier who has lived it can, only one who has seen its brutality, its futility, its stupidity. I am not here to incite violence as some have suggested. I genuinely fear more violence will transpire due to these assaults on freedom. We want to enjoy the blessings of liberty consistent with the Constitution we defended. God bless America, and thank you.
Mr. Capel. Mr. Capel.
Before I begin my remarks, I'd like to ask the chair to admonish the crowd because they're talking when people are talking and everybody deserves to be heard. My name is Terry Capel. I'm in McHenry, and I'm here today. I chose to wear black with a red tie today because I'm feeling a great sense of mourning and the weight of 45,000 people who were killed in 2020. The hundreds of thousands of people who have been killed in the recent decades at the altar of unlimited, unregulated, or under-regulated guns in our country. The Constitution, people are misrepresenting the Second Amendment. The Constitution is not a suicide pact. All of these people who have been dying, parents, children, brothers and sisters, family members, friends. I'm thinking about all those people that have been lost because we don't seem to be wanting to protect, doing even the bare minimum that we can do to protect our citizens from the carnage that we're going through. The state of Illinois has chosen to do something about the most destructive weapons, a whole category of weapons that are the most destructive, that are not used for self-defense. I ask each of you on the board, members of our government, our sheriff, what will you do with more guns, more assault weapons, if you get your way on this resolution and you influence the state to change its law? What will you do when the next mass shooting is here in our county? What if it's somebody you love, one of your family members? Will you hold up this resolution and proclaim the success that you got this resolution, got the assault weapons ban reversed, and you allowed somebody to have a gun that nobody in this country needs for self-defense. The courts have already ruled that we can't have machine guns. We also can't have nuclear weapons. At some point, we have the right to make decisions to protect ourselves. And I ask each of you to think about what you're going to think about after the next mass shooting happens here, if it happens to someone you know, and whether you could have done something to prevent it. Thank you.
Ms. Bosman, followed by Catalina Lauf and Bruce Johnson.
I have timed myself multiple times. I'll be done in 3 minutes. Chairman Bueller, members of my McHenry County Board, few of you come to tonight's vote from the same point of view. Some of you have grown up in homes with a variety of guns used for protection, hunting, collecting, or target shooting. You are comfortable with those tools. Some of you have not grown up partnered by guns. You are not comfortable with them. Some of you have lost friends or children or co-workers to a discharge from a gun. Maybe accidental, maybe purposeful, maybe by a criminal, maybe by a disgruntled legal gun owner. Some of you have been present when an active shooting occurred. You have ducked for cover. You have shielded another person. You know the fear and suffer lasting anguish. Some of you have been spared that experience. But what all of you know collectively is this. Number one, high-powered guns, however you name them, are created for a purpose that is different from cars or hammers or baseball bats. Number two, you know the United States has more guns of every type than it has people. And number three, you know collectively that America has more public mass shootings than any other country in the world. Do these statistics matter to you? Who will decide whether or not to support House Bill 5471? Is it not the work of all of you to follow the laws of the state until they are found unconstitutional? Is it not your job to attempt a logical slowing of gun violence wherever it occurs? How do you want the headlines to read tomorrow? Fear of them or they, those nameless categories that have not materialized, fear of them or their confiscating any or all of your guns, that fear has worked only to pad the pocketbooks of gun manufacturers and sellers and to separate you from me from you and to bring us to this vote tonight. So, what face is each of you as my elected county board member willing to put on McHenry County? It is
Summarize your
timely.
comments, please.
It is timely to support House Bill 5471 when gun violence is a leading cause of premature death in the United States of America.
We've reached 30 minutes. I'll entertain a motion from the board to extend for another 30 minutes. Mr. Kearns, seconded by Ms. Meshes. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Against? Ayes have it. Ms. Lauf?
Hello, everybody. I'm Catalina Lauf, former Republican nominee for U.S. Congress here in the 11th District. Thank you so much for having us here today. The woman before me mentioned that the United States is the country with the highest amount of mass shootings. I think we all know history, and I'd like to name countries like China and Germany. As many of you know, I'm the proud daughter of an immigrant. My mother, Luisa, came here, emigrated to Woodstock from Guatemala, a small country in Central America in the 1980s. And while it's a beautiful place, it has a dark history. From 1960 to 1996, the country suffered a civil war where the government turned its weapons on its own people. Because of its death toll, not 1, not 2, not 20, over 150,000, it's known in Central America as a silent Holocaust. I grew up with stories of this civil war. A report from 1984 discussed the murder of thousands by a military government that maintains its authority by terror. Human Rights Watch has described this extraordinarily cruel actions by the government. Why was it extraordinarily cruel? Because it was against unarmed citizens. I repeat, those atrocities were done by the government against unarmed civilians. Thousands of mothers, fathers, and children slaughtered by their own people. Many of you might be thinking to yourselves after I tell this story, well, that can't happen here. We're America and we're Americans. The reason why it can't happen here, or why we hope that something as dark as that can't happen here, is exactly the powers that we are discussing today. In 2023, we seem to have forgotten history. I'd like to remind everybody in this room who holds the power here in the United States, here in Illinois, and here even in this county. That's we the people. In his farewell address, President Ronald Reagan said almost all the world's constitutions are documents in which governments tell the people what their privileges are. Our Constitution is a document which we, the people, tell the government what to do. Though any time a life is lost due to gun violence, which happens tragically every weekend in the city of Chicago, and we've heard the stories tonight of Highland Park, the case of HB 5471 is the governor and the politicians in Springfield know that passing more gun laws, especially those targeting law-abiding citizens, has and never will stop gun crime. They know that. It's all about power. It's not about the size of the gun or the size of the magazine. It is about power.
Summarize your comments, please.
What this bill does do is undermine the U.S. Second Amendment and the human rights of we the people. And it's time that we fight back against tyranny here in our country. I ask the honorable members of McHenry County Board to stand firm with our Sheriff Rob Tatelman, stand firm with the law-abiding citizens of McHenry County, and it's time we the people stand firm on our freedom at every turn. We cannot come out like a country like Guatemala, and it starts here, right here in McHenry County. Thank you.
Mr. Johnson, followed by Cindy Johnson and Sue Culbertson. And I would ask that you refrain from applause, please. It's disrespectful to the speakers and to us who want to listen. Thank you. Proceed.
Thank you, Chairman. Bruce Johnson, McHenry County for over 35 years. Anytime someone is murdered, it is truly tragic. I'm in agreement with you on that. During my lifetime, over 63 million innocent lives have been taken at the hands of doctors in our country. How ironic is it that the state of Illinois is trying to restrict their Second Amendment rights to save lives in one law, and on the other hand is inviting people from surrounding states to come here as an abortion sanctuary state to murder more innocent lives. The irony playing out in the city of Chicago, as Ms. Lauf had mentioned, where we have the most restrictive gun laws in the nation, is leading the country in murder rates. What about our governor is leading this gun bill? He's opening a gun range just north of the border here in Wisconsin. No law is going to prevent these random mass shootings from occurring. If guns are removed from the hands of law-abiding citizens, only criminals will have guns. The spirit of fear has overtaken our land. I would invite anyone who is living in fear to open their Bible and read 2 Timothy 1:7. For God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidity, but of power, love, and self-discipline. This is the verse I turned to back in March of 2020 when the COVID pandemic broke out in our country. You see, I turned my back on God for several decades as we went about raising our family and pursuing the American dream. We raised our family by living His principles and by the laws of our land, but we realized that God had never left us. And so we turned our back on Him. And He gave us free will to do as we please, and He gives us all that free will. I would encourage everyone here to re-examine their relationship with our Creator and turn back to Him. The great lie that has overtaken our country, that there is no God, and worse yet, that there is no devil. The removal of moral absolutes and the teaching of right and wrong has caused our land to fall prey to evil. Stand for nothing and fall for anything. Over my lifetime, they removed the Bible, God, and prayer from my classroom. Now my grandchildren are losing the teaching of the Constitution in their classrooms. People, wake up. We need to pursue peace through strength. We need for our fellow Americans to turn back to the principles that made our country the greatest country in the history of the world. To water down the meaning of our flag and those who gave their life to preserve it by allowing any other flags to be displayed on government buildings is disgraceful. I implore you to seek our divine Creator. He never left you, I promise. Learn our Constitution as it is written. It hasn't failed us. And bring our moral compass back into our society. In closing, I fully support the resolution for our county to oppose HB 5471 and to vote no on allowing the display of any other flags at our government and school buildings. Our children are counting on us. Thank you.
Cindy Johnson, followed by Sue Culbertson and Fred Bach.
Good evening, board members. I'm Cindy, Bruce's wife. I'm a resident of McHenry County and a wife, a mother of 4, grandmother of 8, and an American who loves God in this country. I first want to start off by thanking County Board Member Jim Kearns for his comments last Thursday at the committees of the whole meeting. You had me in tears. You hit the nail on the head. Everything you stated was 100% truth. We need to bring God back into our lives. We need to bring morality back, and we need to stop the useless killings. Americans need to reset their moral compass. For far too long, Americans, myself included, have not been paying attention and just assuming our governing bodies had our best interests at heart. Never would I have believed that our God-given rights and freedoms would be at stake and slowly being ripped away. We are living under tyranny, and unfortunately, too many are just too busy to even see it. Take a look around. Our world is upside down. A new world order, look it up. Agenda is taking place to divide we the people, and unfortunately, many have fallen prey to its lies. This group of unelected elites are evil and have managed to infiltrate a very dangerous far-lefted ideology into every thread of our society. This includes our schools, churches, government, the medical field, and. Could this be the cause for why so many seem to hate America, our flag, and our Constitution? Even today, I notice many not standing up for the Pledge of Allegiance. Could this be the reason for so much division? We have generations that have been indoctrinated into a very dangerous ideology that removes God, history, and everything this country was built upon. What happens when history is erased? We are left with nothing to compare and are likely to repeat the same mistakes again. I encourage you all to revisit the history of Hitler and the Holocaust, and you may see then the similarities, what's happening around us now. If we don't step up and end this tyranny, we are guaranteed a similar outcome. Today I'm asking all the board members to put away your differences, your political parties, unite and do what's right for those you represent, we the people of McHenry County. Never has united we stand, divided we fall, meant more than in these days we are now living. If you don't unite, then we are destined to fall. We're living in unprecedented times, and each of your votes matter. We the people are watching closely how you vote. Each nay and yay gives us a clear picture of who you are and what you stand for. I hope you honor your oath and the people you represent by voting to oppose HB 5471.
Summarize your comments, please.
As far as the flag policy, hanging any flag other than the governmental flags would show deep disrespect to all those that have fought, many which have lost their lives, so that we could have freedom. Those in favor of hanging a gay pride flag, go ahead and do so at your home. That is your right, and no one is here objecting to that. Thank you.
Sue Culbertson, followed by Fred Bach.
I want to decline my time. Someone can reclaim my time.
Who?
I want to decline speaking.
Okay, so you're going to decline speaking? Passing, okay. Fred Bach, followed by Diane Oltman Ayers and Kathleen Larimer.
Hi, I'm Fred Bach. I've been a resident of McHenry County now for almost 40 years. And one of the things I think we should have people that are actually from our county coming up and talking instead of stacking it with a bunch of outsiders to tell us how we should live our lives here. You know, just to throw out some statistics, how many know that over 250,000 doctors or patients die from doctors every year? I asked, Google or my Siri on my phone. It's actually the third leading cause of death in our country. When our government is allowing our borders to be open and all the drugs coming across now, we're having over 100,000 children die every year from drug overdoses. I've been voting since I was old enough, and one of the things I always had a appreciation for the people that were in the office. I always looked up to them and thought they were the good guys doing what was right. And what I'm finding out, a lot of people that get into office aren't doing what's right. And we have a constitution that they put their hand on a Bible and they swear an oath before God that they will uphold our Constitution, and then they do all these things totally fighting our Constitution all the time. Like in our state now, we have laws wanting to be passed that are going to limit our rights that are in the Constitution, and they're doing it as, they're doing everybody a favor. They do want control over our country. What we see happening right now is not a good thing. Our country is being torn down by these policies that they're coming up with. We want to stop people from doing all these horrible things. It's the heart of man that is where the evil is. We can see it from little children on up, where we see the selfishness, the lying, everything happening right at that point. And then we as adults are teaching our little children. We show them little cartoons. We tell them about global warming. We lie to them. We tell them 10 years, everybody's going to be dead in 10 years. Our oceans are going to be dead. The ice caps are all going to melt. Back in the 70s, it was global cooling that was going to kill everybody. Then we went to acid rain was going to kill everybody. Then we were overpopulating the planet. The oceans would be dead, Ted Danson, 10 years, the oceans would be dead. Then we go into the ozone hole, then global warming. All these things, we're terrorizing the children. Then we're telling them it's okay to kill babies in the womb because we call them a fetus. And then we have all these video games that we're allowing the kids and all the rock music, and they're singing about going into schools, killing people with shotguns and rock music. Let's look at some of the alternatives besides just the guns. Thank you.
Diane Oltman Ayers, followed by Kathleen Larimer and Krista Huffman.
All right, I'm Diane Ayers, and thank you very much for listening. I did not come with a prepared statement. I decided I would come tonight after what I'd read about in the news of what we were taking up, and I remembered we had a veteran here who was talking about his service. I remembered a veteran, my dad, who I have to speak for now. He passed away at the age of 98 a few years ago. But he was also a veteran, and I think perhaps you two would have a very interesting conversation about what the implications of this are. And my dad was in Patton's Third Army. He was in the Red Diamond, Red Devil Regiment that burst through the German lines after D-Day. He was a machine gunner and wound up in a German prison camp for 10 or 12 months before he was finally freed. And he came back permanently disabled psychologically and physically, but still worked 3 jobs and raised his family. And he was for probably 3 decades or more the commander of the Heart of Illinois ex-prisoners of war, whose motto was, we exist to help those who cannot help themselves. That's why a lot of us are here speaking tonight, because there have been a lot of people who haven't been able to help themselves, and nobody is stepping up to do a darn thing to help that situation. We have people here on our county board who have worked with children. Mike, I know you were on the school board. You were on the board at 158 when I was there, and part of the big issue that the board had was how to make that place a safe and secure and productive and enlightened and healthy way place for children to learn and children to come. The schools today, this was 20 some odd years ago, but the look of the schools is a lot different now, and not just in 158, but around our county. And when I worked there, we didn't have to go through security to get in. We didn't have all what we have now, but we have this for a reason. We have people coming here. My dad thought, and we had a lot of conversations about this. In his day, he didn't believe that military weapons of any sort had any place in civilian society. He was very opposed to that. He had hunting guns and all that, but as he pointed, there are deer in the backwoods, and I don't need an AK-47 to shoot a deer. And frankly, but what it is used for, what the only purpose of that is to kill people. So the question, or to do target shooting, and frankly, I don't think that somebody's recreation and their games are important enough to put the lives of their community, especially children, at risk. So, and my father would have agreed with me that too. He was a very strong supporter. He owned some guns. Our neighbor was an NRA supporter until he just couldn't take it anymore. But the point was that, yes, there are places, and you do have a right to defend yourself, but it has nothing to do
If you could
with
summarize
us.
your comments, please.
Okay. I also want to go back to the Constitution. Has more than one amendment. The Constitution also has an amendment that says that we should be, should be a separation of church and state. You should have a freedom of religion or freedom to have religion. And yet all we're hearing tonight is from people who say that these guns, we should allow rational people to have these guns, and yet all we hear from them is conspiracy theories and religious indoctrination, and the hypocrisy, frankly, is just mind-blowing. And I'm speaking up for my dad, Marion Oltman,
If you could
PFC.
please summarize, ma'am. This is the 3rd time I've asked you.
Pardon?
If you could wrap up your
I
comments,
will.
please.
And frankly, and I'm also speaking up for rationality and for maturity. And frankly, your recreation, your fantasies, your conspiracies, all of that, you need to get a grip on that, and you need to grow up, because protecting our children, protecting our citizens is far more important. That's it.
Kathleen Larimer, followed by Krista Huffman and Amanda Hall.
Good evening. First of all, I'd like to thank all of you for running for and being elected to an office that I would never have in the world, just for having to sit and listen to all of this. My name is Kathleen Larimer, and I live in this county. I am here because I personally know the impact of gun violence. You have seen me show this picture before. John was killed in a mass shooting in July of 2012. I know what it is like to know that my son was at the site of a mass shooting and not be able to find out if he was alive. I know what it is like to have the media swarm out in front of the house. I know what it is like to have many of those feelings resurface whenever there is another mass shooting. I know what it is like to fear for the safety in schools, because all of my grandchildren are school age and I have a daughter that's a teacher. I know what it is like to avoid crowded places because they would be the hardest to escape from in case of a shooting. I know what it is like to always be on the lookout for an escape route and for anybody acting suspiciously. I could go on, but I won't. Suffice it to say that I know that the grief that gun violence causes. It has been 10 years since John was murdered. I am still learning to live with the grief, but it is always there and will always be there. So will the fear that someone else that I love and care for will die because of gun violence. If we do nothing, nothing changes. Thank you.
Krista Huffman, followed by Amanda Hall.
Good evening. My name is Krista Huffman. I've been a longtime resident of Crystal Lake. I want to thank all of you for being in your position. I don't envy you at all, what you do on a daily basis. I really appreciate it. Everyone has been so eloquent in what they've been saying on both sides, and I'm afraid I am not very well prepared for this. I didn't think I would be called. I just wanted to say that over the years, I've been duck hunting, I've been pheasant hunting, I've been dove hunting, I've been trap shooting, and now I enjoy target shooting. I had purchased a couple years ago a Glock 19 Gen X. I belong to a wonderful women's shooting league here in McHenry County. I've learned gun safety. I've learned gun laws. I have my FOID card. I understand that there are so many laws that are not enforced, and I don't understand why my possessing 3 15-round magazines would make what I'm doing illegal. I don't understand how removing these from my possession would prevent any unstable individuals from harming others. So please allow us to keep our weapons, act responsibly, and we the people must stand firm, stop fearing what others are doing, and try to instill good morals back in society again. Please vote to oppose the HB 5471. Thank you.
Amanda Hall, followed by Ashley Beasley and Stephanie Scale, is it?
Good evening, board and community. I'm here this evening in solidarity with the community members that are asking that HB 5471 be followed. It is true. Other nations don't have anything similar to the Second Amendment. Our nation, as we know it, is yet in its infancy in comparison to so many others. Older nations have chosen not to have anything like the Second Amendment, and look at the safety their families and children enjoy. It is also true that many people that own guns are law-abiding citizens. Everyone is until they're not. This bill won't stop gun violence, nor be a cure-all, but we must start somewhere, and this is a first step that is desperately needed to address our uniquely American gun violence epidemic. I am also here to stand in solidarity with my family, friends, colleagues, and neighbors of the LGBTQIA community against the proposed flag policy, which would demand a 2/3 vote against the majority, which is already in place. This policy is being used to discriminate another. It is seen and it is obvious. I ask that you vote down this proposal and maintain the current policy of the majority. When Gloria Van Hoff and Kelly Wiegner submitted their proclamation for Black History Month, all I could think of was, it's about time. From an expert on the Underground Railroad and its impact on this county, not to mention being the first Black female board member, I was sure that the board would immediately acknowledge her wisdom and lived experience. The response, a whitewashed slash-through edit, putting in verbiage that was offensive and demeaning, while rewriting a proclamation that was co-sponsored by a Black woman. In watching a video of last week's meetings, I would ask that we remember and refer to the knowledge of a person of color or an individual from the LGBTQIA community when they share with you that an action is racist, discriminatory, or bigoted. That we, I include myself as a white cis woman, listen. That we understand that it is not our place to argue with anyone from those communities in regards to racism and bigotry that is battled every single day. Our place is to sit with that, try to grow through understanding, and do and be better. We can start doing better as a community through compassionate understanding. Board, you did that tonight by making history and passing McHenry County's first Black History Month proclamation, and for that, I thank you. I ask that understanding by maintaining the current flag policy. And Gloria Van Hoff, I thank you for catapulting our community forward.
Ashley Beasley, followed by Stephanie Scale. Hard to read.
She's giving her time to me. I might need a couple seconds of it.
Pardon me?
She's giving her time to me in case I need it.
Okay.
My name is Ashby Beasley. On July 4th, my 6-year-old son and I became mass shooting survivors when a man opened fire on our hometown parade in Highland Park, Illinois. Days after the parade, my son grabbed his head and said it was too full of thoughts and vomited all over the place. He began to wet the bed and wood for months. He wore his clothes inside out and backwards and had to see a trauma therapist because I took him to a parade. This year, I helped pass the statewide ban on assault weapons by lobbying in Springfield and testifying in front of the Senate. And now I'm here imploring all you good folks to uphold the ban to protect lives of every person who lives in McHenry County. And here's why. The people opposing this a ban on assault weapons don't want you to know that mass shooters who use an assault weapon kill 6 times as many people per each mass shooting event. They don't want you to know that 77% of mass shooters who use an assault weapon obtain it legally. And they definitely don't want you to know that during the federal assault weapon ban from 1994 to 2004, mass shootings went down by 70%, proving the ban works. What I want you to know is that the AR-15 was designed by the Armalite Rifle Company in the late 1950s for combat. It wasn't designed to hunt animals, and it was never meant for civilians to hunt other civilians. The 5.56 bullet was designed to tumble inside the body to cause the most amount of damage because the AR-15 was designed to kill. And that's why it's the weapon of choice for mass shooters. In Highland Park, we have a ban on assault weapons, but our shooter lived in Highwood, making it possible for him to legally purchase the weapon he used to kill 7 people at our parade, proving why a statewide ban is necessary. You have a responsibility to keep the people of McHenry safe, but your decision today affects every nearby county and even the state. If a mass shooter legally buys an assault weapon in McHenry County and uses it in a county where the ban is upheld, the blood from those murders is on your hands. Don't be intimidated by the loud people in this room. They are not any part of a well-regulated militia, and they are not being disarmed because they get to keep their guns under the law. But every citizen in McHenry County deserves to live without the fear of being gunned down in the grocery aisle by a weapon of war. I want to put a trigger warning here and leave you with the reason we're all here, fighting to keep assault weapons banned. This is what an assault weapon can do in less than 50 seconds. He's pausing to reload his weapon so he can kill children and families at a parade, and he's not done. These were children that were shot at. This is what we're trying to ban. He's still firing. Please uphold this ban so no other county, no other person, no other family ever has to live through this kind of tragedy again. Thank you.
Sharon Fetting, followed by Julie Jensen and Maria Peterson. Come on up, Peterson.
Hi, my name is Sharon Fetting. I live in McHenry County. First off, I want to say I'm one of those people that have a FOID card, like most of us. And I consider a FOID card like a Second Amendment tax. I shouldn't have to pay to have a FOID card. I shouldn't even have to have a FOID card. It's a tax. And I can only imagine what our forefathers, our founding fathers, would have thought us being taxed on our Second Amendment. Isn't that what the Revolutionary War about taxes was all about? I just want to say that I'm not growing up, but when I was going to college, I worked 30 years ago at a 4 a.m. bar. And it was a little sketchy. Let's just say it was sketchy. And at 4 o'clock when those doors closed, my boss would pull out his gun and put it in his pants. And I am so glad that he did. I felt much safer. And there's a few times when I'm glad he had it. Let me just tell you that. And now I have a governor who thinks we don't deserve to be able to defend ourselves because he wants to put more restrictions on law-abiding citizens. The other side throws out numbers at us, but here's a number they don't say, 2,600. 2,600 people were shot in Chicago in 2022. 600 were killed. You know why they don't say, 2,600 were not done? The reason why they don't talk about it is because 2,600 was not done by law-abiding gun owners with a FOID card. Those were done by criminals. If it was a legal gun owner, you would have heard about it on the news 24/7, but they don't. We just wait until the next weekend for the next shooting in Chicago. 2,600 in a city with the most restrictive gun laws. Criminals do not follow the law, while our governor has 24-hour security. I feel bad for everything that happened at Highland Park. And you read the statement from the Highland Park mayor. I was wondering, were you not able to get a statement to read from the Mayor Lightfoot on how well Chicago restrictive gun laws are working? Of course you couldn't. Because if you divide 2,600 by 52 weeks, it comes out to 50 a week. You guys talk about mass shootings? 50 people on an average get shot in Chicago, and they have the most restrictive gun laws. I just want you to know that I support the police and our sheriff. What we need to do is for the state to scrap the Safety Act. Do not put more restrictions on law-abiding citizens. Vote yes for Sanctuary City. Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion to extend comments. Looks like we've got about 45 minutes of comments if everybody sticks on time, so I will entertain that motion. Ms. Wegner, seconded by Mr. Kearns. All in favor say aye. Aye. Against? Ayes have it. Julie Jensen.
Good evening. Good evening. I'm here reading a statement on behalf of Melanie Johnson. She spoke last Thursday. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist here in McHenry County. She collaborated with other mental health professionals in our county. And again, she spoke, and she has a summary of her last statement. So Melanie says, those of us in favor of HB 5471 recognize that gun violence and mass shootings are a multifaceted issue that require more than just the ban of assault rifles to fix. We also recognize that as a county board, there is only so much that you have the power to do, and that it's not fair to put the entire responsibility of solving mass shootings on your shoulders. However, what is before you today is the opportunity to send a message to one of two groups of people. One message is to Springfield, to let them know that you do not support HB 5471. This is merely a political stunt that has no legal bearing on the outcome of the law. The other message is to the residents of McHenry County that you care about the health and safety of your constituents and that you are willing to support the law of the land even if you disagree with it. In a poll done by the University of Chicago last fall, 71% of Americans say gun laws should be stricter, including half of Republicans, the vast majority of Democrats, and a majority of those in gun-owning households. By voting yes on this resolution, you are not representing the majority of our county. Again, I remind you that teachers, school social workers, school psychologists, licensed therapists, doctors, and nurses are doing our part to address the indicators of mass shooting. I also remind you that gun violence is now the #1 cause of death in children and adolescents, and I will add now college students in the U.S. Do you really want to support keeping the status quo? We all have to do our part to keep our community safe. On behalf of the many licensed mental health therapists in McHenry County, I thank you for all you have done in the past year to aid and support mental and behavioral health in McHenry County. However, voting yes on this resolution is the same as pouring money and resources into preventing lung cancer and heart disease, but then opposing the ban on indoor smoking. Voting yes is in direct opposition to all the amazing work you have done to help our county. Please vote no on the resolution opposing HB 5471. This is a minimal step that can be taken to protect our kids and our community members from another mass shooting tragedy. Thank you.
Matta Peterson, followed by Jen Crick and Tyler Duncan.
Good evening, and thank you for this moment. I'm Maria Peterson from North Barrington. So the Supreme Court last summer ruled in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Brown that government must show that gun regulations are consistent with the nation's historical tradition of firearm regulations. Justice Clarence Thomas himself wrote the majority opinion, including restrictions on weapons must be limited to dangerous and unusual arms that aren't commonly used. A U.S. District Attorney in Chicago, following Justice Thomas's guidelines, ruled last Friday that the government can regulate highly dangerous arms, including assault weapons and large capacity magazines that pose an unusual risk that can cause greater harm and more deaths. This same judge stated that the text of the Second Amendment is limited to only certain arms, and history and tradition demonstrate that, furthermore, assault weapons are also not commonly used for self-defense, and gun owners have many other firearms they could use for protection. Therefore, the assault weapons ban meets the criteria set forth by Supreme Court Justice Thomas. Assault weapons are particularly dangerous weapons, and high-capacity magazines are particularly dangerous weapons accessories, and their regulation accords with history and tradition. The responsibility of protecting public safety and each other should be the top priority on everyone's mind. Together, we can prevent a generation of children dying due to gun violence. Together, we can prevent lifelong suffering, both mental and physical, to those who survive gun violence. Together, we can reduce the amount of mass shootings. How? Rather than pursuing this resolution, can we pursue together common sense gun laws? Let's make sure the wrong people don't have access to guns. Let's make sure that gun ownership is treated as the monumental responsibility that it is. Let's make sure that there are universal background checks and mandatory gun safety training, and that we are not afraid to report a friend or a family member who has a gun who is dangerous to themselves or others, and report them to the police or sheriff. Let us acknowledge that there is a common thread between us humans, that in spite of our differences, that together we can help each other. Thank you.
Jen Crick, followed by Tyler Duncan and Catherine Roche.
Hello. After spending a lifetime and a career working with various early childhood advocates and serving on the District 26 School Board, I am well aware that not much being said right now will really make a difference, and your votes have already been promised and essentially cast, despite the facts, the numbers, and the data you have all been given. despite more than 6,000 children being injured or killed due to gun violence this year. Despite the fact that 4.5 million women in the U.S. have been threatened with a gun by an intimate partner. Despite the fact that the U.S. has a gun homicide rate 26 times higher than and a gun suicide rate nearly 12 times that of other high-income countries. Despite the fact that every day 120 Americans are killed with guns. Despite Highland Park. Despite Michigan State University. Despite gun violence being the #1 cause of death for children in this country. Despite all of this, some of you before me tonight have chosen to make public your stance of solidarity with those who oppose a law designed to protect our children and our communities. Some of you have already decided to ignore data, research, and common sense to, in essence, vote down a party line. Party over policy. It's not only disdainfully predictable and disappointing in the lack of nuance for what politics can and should represent, it's also quite banal. We already know how this will go down tonight, probably, and yet look around the room. We know and we continue to show up because we refuse to support the premise of the vote that says, with regard to gun violence in America, we are broken and we refuse to fix it. We may be disappointed tonight, but we will not be defeated. At this time, I'd like to take this opportunity to offer a sincere thank you to those of you who oppose common sense measures of gun safety and who by this opposition seemingly wish to willingly continue to support children being murdered in schools, at parades, and on college campuses. Thank you, because your blatant support of gun violence and murder has allowed for an increased awareness for the McHenry County Moms Demand Action Group. Since Highland Park, since the push to make this McHenry County a gun sanctuary, we have grown each month by double digits. Thank you for helping us to be recognized on local news outlets. We now have grown to well over 1,300 members. That's 1,300 families and countless future voters. 5 in my house alone because I have teenagers. So again, thank you. You see us here. We know the likely end to tonight's story, and we know we have work to do. We are here, we are strong, we are growing, and we are just getting started.
Tyler Duncan, followed by Catherine Roche.
Good evening, board members, Chairman Bueller. My name is Tyler Duncan. I'm here on behalf of Second Amendment Sports, a lawful licensed dealer in the 5th District. I would like to highlight a few things and state a few facts. First off, being the Second Amendment precedent, federal precedent. We've already heard that if we aren't constitutional scholars, we shouldn't be voting on this or speaking on it, but the nice thing is the Supreme Court makes their opinions known to the citizens. They put them out. So let's talk about Heller versus D.C. Heller versus D.C. looked at the linguistics of the Second Amendment at the time that it was written. They used dictionaries from 1755 to break down the actual words in the Second Amendment. The precedent that was set in there is that firearms commonly owned for lawful purposes, not just self-defense, but for all lawful purposes, could not be banned. That the right of the people to keep and bear arms was an individual right, not the right of a militia. Next up was Caetano versus Massachusetts, another precedent-setting ruling. That dealt with tasers, not firearms, but tasers. But because they are a bearable arm, they are covered under the Second Amendment. They were considered common use with only 200,000 present in circulation. Now, if you ask me, the ATF already said the AR-15 is the most commonly owned rifle in America. Sounds like common use to me. Now we move on to Bruin, in which the Supreme Court ruled that the interest balancing type of analysis that was used for decades to uphold gun control was incorrect. It stated that if a law implicates the Second Amendment, it must be backed by historical tradition at the time of the founding. Again, not 1900s, not 1850, 1791 to maybe 1820s. That's right around where the last of the founders passed away. The law, sorry, I skipped ahead. Now, yes, the judge did on Friday rule that the assault weapon ban was constitutional. Now, what is not being said is that this judge is historically terrible on firearms, and it's already been overturned twice in cases that set circuit court precedent on Second Amendment issues. Not to mention, if you actually read her opinion, it is full of interest balancing opinion, not allowed under Bruin. This was an activist judge that made this opinion, and she will be shot down. And by the way, she did make one historical analysis, and that was for a law that was in the 1920s. Just to let you know, the Bruin law, the law that was shot down in the Bruin case, was a gun law from 1911. So her analogous law has no grounds. So I'll finish it off with this. As I've said previously, Second Amendment sports is involved in multiple lawsuits, and we have already prevailed in one. We are already under a temporary restraining order. We will win in the end, and we will beat this assault weapon ban. Just know that when we are done with this law, we're coming for the rest of the frivolous laws. The FOID card is next.
Please summarize.
And remember, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
Catherine Roche, followed by Florence DeMio and Eric Sievertson.
Hello, everyone. My name is Catherine Rush. I am a Crystal Lake resident of over 6 years, a mom of 3, a proud FOID card holder, and I will be reading a statement from a survivor of the Highland Park 4th of July shooting. Hello, my name is Lauren Bennett, and I was shot multiple times on the 4th of July in Highland Park. On that morning, I attended the Highland Park parade with my family. This included my husband, my 2 youngest sons, my parents, and my husband's parents. Sitting at a 4th of July parade in Highland Park, which has always been a place of safety, I would have never imagined that the turbulent sound I heard and hail of concrete fragments and shrapnel I saw was actually a maelstrom of bullets from a Smith & Wesson M&P 15. Within the first 3 seconds, while most people were unsure what was happening, I was hit for the first time. I felt a tight shock in my back and hip and saw my entire lower left side was bleeding. I knew right then we were under attack. At that precise moment, I assumed I was the target, and maybe I was, because when I got up to run, I was hit again by another bullet that deeply cut through my upper back. For those who have never felt a bullet rip through your skin, let me explain how it feels. Imagine a hot, metal, dart-like projectile tearing through your body at a supersonic speed, faster than the speed of sound. You'll feel it burn through your skin and feel excessive amounts of blood draining out of you and soaking everything. At this point, you most likely feel as if you're dying, maybe wondering if this is how it all ends. I can assure you that's what I was thinking. In total, I had 1 bullet enter my lower back and exit out of my left hip. The left bullet tore through my upper left back, penetrating deep into my skin. Numerous pieces of shrapnel from this bullet also pierced my upper left arm. My family ran through bullets, jumped over fallen bodies, while 2 of my sons were running behind me, looking at my blood-soaked body, assuming their mother was probably bleeding to death. We survived in a battle zone that day and will carry the most horrendous images with us for the rest of our lives. We continue to suffer, and our lives are now fundamentally different in every regard. That morning, in a matter of minutes, the most basic, unalienable human rights were taken from me, my family, and countless others. The right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These are written in the preamble to the first sentence of the United States founding document, the Declaration of Independence, which was signed in 1776, a full 15 years before the Second Amendment was written. What is more important? The first and most basic right of all peoples, or the right to own weapons of mass destruction that didn't even exist when the Second Amendment was ratified? Our most basic right granted to us before all else was ripped away from me that day. I should not have to live in constant fear, so a few individuals can own weapons that only belong on a battlefield. These particular weapons are guaranteed to kill, mutilate, and massacre hundreds of people within seconds. We should all be
summarize your
protected from
comments,
this
please.
because our right to live comes before everything else. In closing, I respectfully request you attach my following statement to your resolution. I, Lauren Bennett, am a survivor, a member of a small minority of people in the country who were shot but not killed by a shooter armed with an AR-15 style semi-automatic weapon. This proposed resolution opposing the prohibition of the sale and possession of these types of weapons puts us all at risk.
Summarize,
This is
please.
regrettable to say at least. The politicians who support this resolution are placing all people's lives and all of our safety at risk. Thank you. Where would you like this for the record?
Florence DeMeo, followed by, was that a pass? Okay. Followed by Eric Sievertson and Adam Kruczek.
Thank you for letting me speak. I'm an NRA instructor and a range safety officer. I am against chipping away of our Second Amendment rights. I'm also on my church safety team, and my job is to keep everyone safe. Can you tell me how many rounds of ammunition I should carry to keep my pastor safe? Can you tell me how many rounds I need to keep the Sunday school children alive and safe? Can you tell me how many rounds I need to protect our congregation? You can't, because you don't know. It's not your job to know. It's your job to uphold and protect our constitutional freedoms. Thank you.
Eric Sievertson, followed by Adam Kruczek and Tom Dillon.
Good evening. My name is Eric Syverson, and I'm from McHenry. Thank you for the opportunity tonight to address the board regarding the resolution opposing the Protect Illinois Communities Act. Protecting the rights of people is not, or at least should not be, a controversial issue. Standing up against the state legislature and the governor trampling individual rights is not, or at least should not, be a controversial issue. The Protect Illinois Communities Act, ironically, does just the opposite. It deprives law-abiding citizens of their right to life and to liberty. It is simply a political tool to maintain control and win elections by deflecting the narrative away from failed policies and placing the blame on inanimate objects, all the while doing nothing to stop the rampant violent crime in our state. While I would have rather seen the original resolution with language about no county resources being used to implement an unconstitutional law, I am here today to urge you to vote in favor of this resolution. This new law is clearly a violation of our inalienable rights that are protected by the Constitution, not granted by it. The Second Amendment violations are obvious. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. If you're unsure who the militia is, it is everyday citizens. But this right is extended to the people because we all have a right and a duty to defend our rights and to ensure that we remain a free state. If you're unsure why the right to keep and bear arms is necessary, it's not just about hunting. It's about an inalienable right to life, and we as people have a duty to protect lives, and we have the right to access the means to defend life. It is also about protecting the inalienable right to liberty. The Constitution was written on the heels of Americans standing up to the oppressive world superpower at the time and defending their right to liberty. But this bill does not stop at trampling on one constitutionally protected right. The Fourth Amendment guarantees that the people will be secure against unreasonable search and seizure and secure in their own person and property. There is no probable cause for all legal gun owners to have to declare to the state what firearms they own. The Fifth Amendment protects your right to not be a witness against yourself or be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. This bill requires gun owners to create and attest to a record that could likely be used against them by the government or by criminals, or to later deprive them of their life, liberty, and property. It is in itself depriving them of the liberty to obtain specific firearms that are some of the most common firearms in this country and throughout the world. There are numerous other ways that this law violates the U.S. and the Illinois Constitution, and those concerns have been raised with the courts. And based on the rulings so far, many of those cases are, in the words of the court, likely to succeed based on their merits. You should not wait for the courts to decide. There is no reasonable amount of time for inalienable rights to be infringed while the courts go through their process. You have not taken an oath to defend the state legislature and the governor. You have taken an oath to defend the Constitution.
Summarize your comments, please.
Either you have the ability to determine that something is violating the Constitution, or you're unfit to serve in a role whose oath includes upholding the Constitution.
Adam Kruchek, followed by Tom Dillon and Brian Myers.
Hello, I'm Adam Kruchek from Crystal Lake, and I just wanted to state that I feel like both groups that are here are looking for the best interest. Personally, I think we should respect both sides. People who have been through trauma have one way they want to approach it, and maybe people who haven't been through the trauma have another way. What I wanted to bring up here is the original trauma that the Founding Fathers were going through and other events through history to sort of balance the conversation so that you can weigh both sides. So tyranny is a form of government in which a single leader or group exercises absolute power over people, often through the use of force and repression. This can involve the suppression of individual rights and freedoms, the manipulation of the legal system, and the use of violence or coercion to maintain control. Many times it's just disregarding the will of the people. Joseph Stalin implemented strict gun control measures aimed at disarming his population. Stalin saw private ownership of firearms as a threat to the stability of his social state and sought to prevent individuals from using weapons to resist the government authority. The effects of disarmament under Stalin's regime were devastating. Any dissent was crushed, and individuals who dared criticize the government were often executed or imprisoned. Tens of millions of people were killed, either directly by government forces or through starvation, disease, and other factors resulting from his policies. In 1915, the Ottoman government implemented a policy disarming the Armenian population. This left Armenians vulnerable to violence and led to the deaths of over an estimated 1 million people. In lead up to the Holocaust, the Nazi government implemented strict gun control measures disarming Jews and other minority groups, left them defenseless. In 1989, the Chinese government implemented strict gun control measures, including confiscating firearms from citizens. When the pro-democracy protests erupted in Beijing's Tiananmen Square, the Chinese government responded with violence, cracking down, killing its own citizens. In 1994, the Rwandan government disarmed the Tutsi minority, leaving them vulnerable to attack by the Hutu majority. This led to the genocide, in which an estimated 800,000 people were killed. Going back to our founding fathers, in the Federalist Paper, number 84, Hamilton wrote, "The right of self-defense is the first law of nature. In most governments, it has been the study of the rulers to confine this right within the narrowest limits possible. So whenever standing armies are kept, but the right of the people to keep and bear arms is, under color or pretext whatsoever, prohibited, then liberty, if not already annihilated, is on the brink of destruction." In other words, if your government is funding an army, but the people cannot have guns, freedom is lost. All it takes is the wrong ideology to come into power. I recently read through Elie Wiesel's Night in preparation for a visit to the Holocaust Museum with my children.
Summarize your comments, please.
There was a very dark paragraph where Eli tragically loses his faith, saying, "Never shall I forget the smoke, never shall I forget the little faces of the children, whose bodies I saw turned into wreaths of smoke beneath a silent blue sky. Never shall I forget those flames which consumed my faith forever." We don't have a gun problem, we have a humanity problem. Bring back the emphasis on guarding and protecting life, the infinite value of a life. Thank you.
Tom Dillon, followed by Brian Myers and Phil Wegner.
Good evening, Chairman and McHenry Board. Thank you for having us here this evening. I wish to state, as a McHenry County resident, I am one of your constituents, and I believe it is my duty to let you know what my beliefs are and my wishes. So I do oppose the current gun ban, and I believe that you, as a McHenry County Board, should take your constituents' thoughts and wishes to heart, and I don't expect that this resolution would allow McHenry County citizens to go out and buy any of the guns that are currently banned by the law, but I think it is necessary to send a message to our state legislators that what they're doing is unconstitutional. Another thing I wanted to say was another problem with this bill is it is not related just to the so-called assault rifles. It is related to other weapons and accessories that are not considered assault rifles. Constitutionally, it is not correct to go after these firearms. Also, one other thing that happens with the way the law is written is that criminals would be exempted because in a case, I believe it's Haynes versus the U.S., the federal case was ruled that criminals did not have to register their firearms because it would be against their Fifth Amendment rights. Thank you, and please do the right thing.
Brian Myers, followed by Phil Wegner and Susan Labai.
Brian Myers, resident of the Ridgefield Crystal Lake area. We're here tonight to look at the latest version, I think it's version 4.0, of the manufactured controversy over gun worship and the real dilemma of how to deal with gun safety. In the world of this manufactured controversy, we pretend that we can opine on the constitutionality of the state assault weapons ban. We're not judges or constitutional experts. The law is wending its way through the court, but let's pretend that we can supersede these judges at the level of the McHenry County Board. We need to reach a national consensus, or at least have a national conversation about guns. Maybe we can try to solve the gun violence problem, the gun suicide problem, which I don't believe I've heard mentioned tonight, and it's humongous, by at least having waiting periods or background checks. We can take action at the federal level on assault weapons so that an Illinois ban is not circumvented in Wisconsin or Indiana or Missouri. Instead, we pander to those, and I've heard it in this room at previous meetings on this topic. We fantasize. We hear people who fantasize about insurrection, secession, and civil war. We pander to those who believe the solution is to sell more guns. We cater to the outsiders like Charlie Kirk and Ron DeSantis and the Proud Boys and Donald Trump Jr. that we bring in to raise money and get out the vote. There is an alternative. We can turn away from the crazy people. We could do our homework, and we could look for common ground with people on the other side of this issue. That was done in the Congress last year. Yes, it was a relatively limited law that was passed, but both parties came together, both sides of the gun safety issue came together on that and got something passed. The choice is ours. Meanwhile, I'll just try to avoid getting shot at school or at a parade. Make good choices. Have a nice day.
Phil Wegner, followed by Susan Labai and John Labai.
Good evening. My name is Phil Wegner. I live in Crystal Lake. Let me first explain who I am. You may remember me. I spoke at last Thursday Committee of the Whole meeting. I was born in McHenry County, and I've lived here for most of my life. I'm the son of a Marine. I joined the Air National Guard when I turned 18. I was in combat communications, which means that my mission was to help secure a runway and establish communications before our planes landed. I served in Kuwait. I served in Hungary, helping troops move into Bosnia. I knew that my mission was serious and that having quick access to a functioning weapon was important. I took it so seriously that I joined a marksmanship team. However, when I left the military, I knew that my need for an assault weapon was over. If you still believe that you need one to defend yourself or your home, I respectfully disagree. The paranoia that makes you think this way is dangerous to everyone. And again, it's just not healthy. Not healthy to you, your loved ones, or the people near you. Now, to the person that the chairman gave the honor to speak last at the committee of the whole meeting. You're home, Rambo. There's no need to threaten people. But most importantly to the chairman himself, why did you do this? What within you made you shape the conversation this way? Please, answer me. I know you won't. That was a crowd of retirees and mothers. You orchestrated a threat on an audience of women. Women demand action. Mothers demand action. You planned to have him speak last. Now let me summarize the gist of my public comment on Thursday. Feel free to rewatch it. Listen for these lines. I feel they need repeating. You leaders were chosen to represent us. I use the word leader because that's what we need you to be. Thank you.
Susan Labai, followed by John Labai.
Thank you. I'm glad to have the opportunity this evening to share my hope that the members of the board will listen to the stories that have been shared tonight by the survivors in Highland Park. You've had the mayor of Highland Park come and ask you not to pass this resolution. Please. All constitutional rights are subject to reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions. And the military weapons that are the subject of the recently passed state law were never intended to be available for retail sale in civilian populations. The more of these weapons are out there, the greater the likelihood becomes that they will be the cause of yet another mass shooting. After Highland Park, action in our community was essential. I'm among the mothers and others who lobbied our state legislature to pass the gun safety rules that have just been enacted. And I am pleased to be represented in the Illinois House by a McHenry County legislature who voted for that legislation. And I would ask you all this evening to find the courage to do the thing that promotes the public safety of our community. Thank you for your attention.
John Levi, followed by Tara Nielsen and Carolyn McCabe.
John Levi, 24-year resident of Crystal Lake. Thank you, Chairman Bueller, members of the County Board, for the opportunity to make comments on the resolution opposing the Protect Illinois Communities Act. By now, you've heard all the arguments for and against this resolution. And many of you, if not all of you, have decided how you're going to vote on this resolution. But before you do, I would ask you to do one last thing. Check in with your conscience. Your conscience, that little thing inside you that's good from bad, right from wrong, your moral center. Ask it two questions. First question, is the current level of gun violence and mass shootings acceptable or unacceptable? I would hope that most of you would say the current level of mass shootings and gun violence in America is unacceptable. If you say it's not, you need to have a real long talk with your conscience and the big man upstairs or the big woman upstairs. Okay, second question. If you answered yes, current level of mass shootings and gun violence is unacceptable, you have to ask yourself the second question. What am I doing as a local official to combat it? Those disagreeing with this resolution have answered the question by supporting the Illinois Legislature's policy position banning assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. However, those supporting this resolution are therefore obliged and compelled to provide alternate policies to address gun violence. What policies do you propose to reverse the epidemic of gun violence in this county, in this state? Many of you will say, well, existing gun laws are adequate and just need to be enforced. Then you need to ask yourself the follow-up question: why are existing gun laws not being enforced by prosecutors, by law enforcement officials? And what actions do we need to take to address their failure to enforce? I understand your jurisdiction is just unincorporated McHenry County, but as the county's highest-ranking legislative body, you do play an important role in setting the policy direction for all levels of government in the county. If this resolution does pass, the burden falls upon you to articulate the vision for the whole county on how to reduce gun violence. If so, I look forward to the deliberations of the county and the participation of the state's attorney's office and the office of the sheriff and you county board members to address how you're going to address gun violence in McHenry County. Thank you for your time, and remember, your conscience is waiting. Thank you.
Tara Nielsen, followed by Carolyn McCabe and Robert Lysick.
First, Chris, on behalf of the rest of us patriots, I apologize for Mr. Wegner's words. Absolutely wrong. Good evening. Watching this resolution from the beginning to where we are today has been very eye-opening at how our local government works, or doesn't in some cases. We can all learn things from our experiences. This is a new year for this new board. I'm looking forward to seeing you include the constituents that voted you in. Ask them their thoughts on specific things you will be voting on, like I see Ms. Greeno do. Stand up for what you believe in, even if you think it's unpopular, like I have seen Mr. Kaminsky do. Be proud to be an American and stand for our Constitution, like I have seen Mr. Kunkel do. Involve the voters, and they will appreciate being included. And while I can see some things visually, I don't know what's behind them, like when committee chairwoman Ms. Altoff took a teacher's tone and admonished the rest of the public for expressing their opinion and not being respectful. Then she replied that she was respectful as she let us speak during member comments. That can be seen in 1 hour and 56 minutes of the committee meeting on January 31st. Or when Ms. Wegner, at approximately 2 hours and 5 minutes, passed a note quietly to Ms. Campbell. Is that even allowed during an open meeting? Or how about 55 seconds later, Ms. Wegner went up to Ms. Altoff and whispered in her ear. Ms. Altoff whispered back into Ms. Wegner's ear. Or how about we watch Ms. Van Hoff texting during the committee meeting? That's at 2 hours and 9 minutes. Communication between public body members during open meetings needs to be public information. If a meeting is genuinely open to the public, members shouldn't be allowed to conduct parts of the meeting in private. This shows that we need increased transparency. I will say thank you to the board for sitting through yet another board meeting of public comments. I understand a few of you are complaining about sitting through our comments for hours. This is a perfect moment to remind you that you were voted into your seat by us. And usually, governmental jobs are at the service of the people that voted them in. This could be the beginning of some of us getting stronger spines, knowing each other's stories, and listening to what the people want, instead of inserting your own agenda. Yes, we citizens are partly to blame, where we find ourselves because we have been asleep. However, we are now very awake. We will remember those who wanted to be in their
Summarize your comments,
seats
please.
as servants and those who wanted their seats for selfish ambitions. Thank you.
Carolyn McCabe, followed by Robert Lysick.
Hey, good evening. We're getting in the home stretch, so I have a rather loud voice. I'm a girl from the East Coast. I'm a survivor, and my family are survivors of a city where a plane came into our cities and invaded and crashed into the Pentagon and the Twin Towers. My father was a U.S. Border Patrolman in the 50s, son of Italian immigrants. My uncle was Chief of Patrol of the New York City Police Department. I represented 3 major industries on safety and health to Congress. And I can tell you the government does not care about science, and they do not care about safety. What I'm going to tell you tonight, what I have not heard one person on either side talk about this evening. We have a societal not a gun problem. Guns don't kill people. People kill people. People go out and premeditate. They find a weapon to kill, whether it is an airplane, whether it is a knife, whether it is a knife, a gun. The most dangerous weapon we have in our society in the last 20 years is in your hand. It is in the center of your homes, and that is this. 24/7 violent programming, rape against women, kids watching Breaking Bad, parents and grandparents allowing their children to play violent video games that desensitizes them to take out cities, Minecraft. Not one person tonight, not moms in action, not anybody talking about the law. This is the problem, and it has been. I was there when Columbine happened. I was not in Colorado. And since the Clinton administration, this is not a political problem. This is a societal problem. We glorify alcohol and drugs on TV. What happens? Domestic violence. How many of you have subscriptions to Netflix? Why are you not holding Hollywood and these gaming 24/7? This weekend, I watched 3 days of HBO, of other cable. It is nothing but Arnold Schwarzenegger, shoot 'em up. Okay, we have a problem with our children. The International Public Safety Association in 2013 actually published a real peer-reviewed study on the risk factors on why people are committing mass violence.
If you could summarize your comments, please.
It is single-family homes, kids on psychotropic drugs. We can thank our medical and health profession for drugging children up. We've raised the cost of living. So I would ask the board, support this, but you all need to come back with the members of your community and start talking about what is on television 24/7 that you're paying to pipe into your homes. And you wonder why we have a violence problem? You're paying for it. You watch it. You support these Hollywood celebrities.
Ma'am, could you please summarize your comments?
So to sum it up, I know this is a very difficult vote and decision, but let's look at the risk factors and focus on those, not removing what we can protect ourselves, because the day is coming. The New World Order is here.
Robert Lysick.
Thank you very much for listening to all of us for this very long time. I'll be as brief as possible. people have implied that the board doesn't have the right to go ahead and decide that the Second Amendment should be a critical part of this county. I think if we can proclaim that it is Black History Month and not Hispanic History Month or Oriental History Month, I think maybe we could go ahead and proclaim that we can support the Constitution. These officers, police officers, do not attack people. They defend them. And the officers here, the officer in this room and the officers downstairs, are carrying firearms that normally have magazine capacities in excess of 15 rounds. So for anybody, those would be considered assault weapons under HB 5417. Those are being used for defensive purpose. And all of you board members feel it is necessary, even in one of the safest counties, to have officers with those weapons to defend you. Why wouldn't a private citizen who might not have the luxury of living in the best counties feel or need that same sense of security? You know, this bill has gone to make so many firearms considered assault weapons. Olympic shooters who shoot a .22 caliber rifle with a thumb hole stock. That just means you can put your finger through to get a proper purchase on it and shoot accurately. This bill has considered that an assault weapon. Commonly held semi-automatic handguns are many of them considered assault weapons. It's an overreach, and we've had speakers come up here and try to tell us that a city of Chicago or a Chicago judge in one of the most liberal places in the country is the be-all, end-all on the Constitution. The Supreme Court decided the Constitution, and they have said those commonly held firearms are within the rights of people to own. Thank you very much for your time.
That concludes our public comments this evening.
I have a minute. I put my name down.
You did not check to speak.
I won't take 3 minutes. I'll be quick. I'm Dennis Brinkman. I've been in this county for 50 years. 7 kids, 13 grandkids, and I came to the meeting last Tuesday and I said that we're all here for the same purpose. We all want to make our community safer. Right, we're all together. We're all good, we're all Americans. And I'm from McHenry County for 50 years. I'm not some radical from somewhere else coming here trying to make like this is our county, not theirs. If they want to go back to Chicago, they can go to Chicago and change things there. Don't come out here and try and make this Chicago. I'm all in favor of the policemen. Give the power to the cops. They don't have it in Chicago. They can't even chase criminals after they witness a crime. They can't chase them. Anyway, getting back anyway, damn it. The governor is not on your side. He's not on our side. All he wants to do is get goddamn votes. He's a pig. He's the worst thing that's happened to Illinois since.
Sir, please, the profanity is not allowed here, so please.
Oh, did I say something? Sorry. Anyway, nobody's trying to take anything from you mothers or anything. We're just trying to keep the rights that we had when we came here. And we are from this county. We'll do what we darn well please in this, as I say, darn well please in this county. And I'm an NRA instructor, and I've got over 2,600 students, and I've told them all, do not register your firearms, because Hitler and Mao and everybody has said, you have registration, and then you have confiscation, and you are no longer a citizen, you are a subject. Thank you for letting me say that.
We will move on to new and unfinished business. I'll entertain a motion to approve item 13A, resolution opposing HB 5471, otherwise known as Public Act 102-1116, and supporting its repeal in the Illinois State Legislature. Ms. Greeno makes the motion. Mr. Hendricks seconds. Discussion. Mr. Hendricks.
I'll keep my comments brief. I think we've heard about every side to the issue one way or the other as we can. I just want to thank everybody for coming out, letting us know. Frankly, like, you've spent a lot of time, no matter the issue. It helps the process. I do appreciate it. I've met several of you on both sides. If anyone would like to, if you can make it to the end of this meeting, I'd love to talk to you, whether you're against this resolution or not, or for the resolution or not. It doesn't make a difference to me. I'd love to have a conversation with you, and I would ask that the board do adopt this resolution.
Ms. Wegner?
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being here for public comment. I did try to listen with an open mind and an open heart to all of your comments. We heard a lot of impassioned comments and arguments this evening, and I want to give 3 factual reasons why we should vote no against this resolution. First is data, second is economic repercussions, and the third is lawsuits and the result of the lawsuits. So first, data. Data is not political, data is data. There's been 82 mass shootings this year compared to 59 at the same time last year. 10 of these mass shootings were from February 17th through February 19th. So as we heard from a woman who spoke last Thursday and then was reiterated today about the 4 commonalities of people who cause mass shooting: childhood trauma, an identifiable crisis point leading up to a shooting, the need to blame someone for that crisis, and the opportunity to conduct a mass shooting. First 3 are mental health. And we know that we have a strong mental health board. We have many different resources here in the county, and we're doing what we can for mental health. But number 4, the opportunity to conduct a mass shooting or access to firearms. That is the legislator's job. At some point, the legislators need to take action to help, and they're doing what they can. Gun violence is the #1 cause of death of children. It's not acceptable. So when our legislators in Springfield are doing something to help reduce these mass shootings, some of you may not like it, but they're trying to do something. Number 2, economic reason why we should oppose this. First, if you look at Highland Park and the 4th of July shooting just 7.5 months ago, so far the cost to Highland Park itself has been $7 million. $7 million. That does not include the 6 days that the businesses were closed, so the businesses lost revenue and the city lost sales tax. On top of that, there's a lawsuit against Highland Park that can cost them millions more dollars. Right there, there's an economic reason. Think about another economic reason. Think about the negative financial impacts. We condemn Springfield once again in our county. We look to Springfield for funding for programs. Why would Springfield give us money if we constantly condemn them just because, and criticize them just because we don't like them? It's okay to criticize them, but to make a big spectacle of it, we're hurting our county. And third is law. You heard, we had people tell us today that this past Friday, there was, the day after the Committee of the Whole, the United States District Court of Northern District of Illinois denied the temporary restraining order for Naperville. So on August 17th of last year, Naperville banned assault rifles. And since then, a local gun store asked for the TRO and a preliminary injunction on the ban. So if you look at the ruling from last Friday, The court recognized that the right secured by the Second Amendment is not unlimited, and it gave 2 examples. I'm not going to read all of them in the interest of time because many of them were spoken. Bruin hearing, that's also been brought up, that related to handguns, not assault rifles. But I do want to read a couple portions of this, so it's brief. Gun ownership and gun regulation have evolved since the passage of the Second Amendment. In the 18th century, violent crime was at historic lows. The rate at which adult colonists were killed by violent crime were 1 in 100,000 to 5 in 100,000. The pressing problem for minimizing violence in the colonies was not guns. The musket took at best half a minute to load a single shot. The user had to pour powder down the barrel, compress the charge, and then drop or ram the ball into the charge, and the accuracy was poor. People didn't even keep their guns loaded. So the combination of the limitations of the guns meant they were seldom used as the primary weapon of choice. Other arms were prevalent, as were the laws governing these other arms. So here's the other example. The Bowie knife, which was called the fighting knife. Many Southerners began carrying the knife in public because it offered a better chance to stop an assailant. Responding to the growing prevalence and the danger posed by the Bowie knives, states enacted laws regulating them. Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, and more. And at the start of the 20th century, every state in the United States except one had regulated Bowie knives. 38 of them explicitly named the weapon, and 12 more barred the whole category of knives. So there are precedent for limiting weapons on a national scale, on a state scale. We need to make the best choice for McHenry County. We need to vote no to this resolution because we need to safeguard our economy, we need to obey and uphold the law, and we need to protect our citizens. And for my fellow board members who are feeling pressured to vote to approve this resolution, remember, you have data, economic repercussions, and laws to fall back on if you vote no to this resolution. They can be your excuses. Thank you.
Mr. Scala?
On Thursday, I had handed out to all the board members a modification to the resolution that was presented in the board packet. I'm not going to go speak a lot about it. It was providing an alternative based on the fact of the grounds by which this county board can challenge the constitutionality of the HB 5471. The modifications that I made simply kind of better defined what our lane is in regard to what we can do. So I will make a motion to modify the resolution as presented in the red outline version that I had presented on Thursday night.
Is there a second? Mr. Smith seconds. Discussion? Ms. Bess? This is on the amendment.
This is on Mike's amendment. Okay, never mind.
Ms. Meshes?
Thank you. I appreciate Member Scala's attempt to make a more accurate resolution to what we can and can't do, and to also get closer to where I do stand on this. As I've said in previous meetings, I support House Bill 5471 because I think that the state does need to make sure that we're doing well regulation and that that's in the lane of the state and the lane of the federal government. As we already know, our state's attorney has already filed a lawsuit, which is part of his job as he sees fit. And so I think we should all support each other doing the job as we see fit. But I would still take out some more words out of the already pulled down version. We don't, in the fourth whereas, we don't have the ability to find an act constitutional or not constitutional because that's not our purview. I tend to think anytime we're referring to things as lame duck sessions, that can be another way of kind of inciting some anger towards the state. In general, I think one of our issues we have to be careful is how we communicate to the public, because our words entice residents to feel one way or the other. Tenure of our speech makes quite a difference. And the misconstruing of what we mean makes quite a difference. I could go more on that, but you guys only want to hear that at this moment, so I will hold off on that. In any case, although I appreciate the change that's being proposed, I still would be in opposition to this resolution.
Mr. Gottebauer.
Yes, I'm in opposition to the amendment, and I'm in opposition to the amendment because this board, through the Legislative and Government Committee, through various members and the chairman, have spent quite a bit of time actually crafting one draft of this. And that's the draft that was brought forward, and I'd like to keep it in its current form. Because of that, I just look at the process of how we got here, and if we're going to rewrite this on the day that we're here, I think it's a disservice to everybody here.
Any other comments on the amendment? Mr. Kearns.
I'm going to also vote against the amendment. I think we've heard tonight, I don't know how many hours it was, we've heard a lot, and it made a lot of sense. Good arguments on all sides. But to water this down doesn't make any difference. If we vote one way or the other, because it's watered down, it's a waste of time. Let's leave it the way it is, and let's vote up or down, and let's get this discussion and move it forward. I will respectfully disagree with some of my board members who think that we are pressured on our vote. I think I will argue the point that no one's going to pressure me. I have my thoughts, and I am independent, and I think most of us board members are. I think that, I've said it on Thursday, I don't believe it's a gun issue. I think it's a lot of other issues. So let's just vote on this. Let's vote down this amendment, and then let's vote on the resolution as it's originally written.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to support the amendment because just as we spoke on Thursday and presented by Member Scala, I think it more accurately portrays what, as a county board, we should be doing with regards to what our state has proposed here. Thank you.
Any other comments, discussion on the amendment? Ms. Greeno?
So the talk about what we can and cannot do, first words out of our mouth, protect the U.S. Constitution and the state of Illinois Constitution. And the purpose of the Second Amendment is to protect us from a tyrannical government, and with registration can lead to confiscation, and we have to stand up against an out-of-control state legislature from restricting our freedoms. And it is very important that we do this. And these personal freedoms, these rights, were endowed by God, not given it to us or taken away by the state legislature of Illinois.
Any other comments on the amendment? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Against? Nay. Motion does not carry. Back to the original resolution and motion. Any further discussion? Ms. Ness.
So I have several problems with the resolution. The phrase common understanding of the Constitution is not relevant because we cannot rely on a common understanding of the Constitution, as we've just seen. There are many people who have different interpretations
of both the Illinois and the federal Constitution, which is why it's in the court's hands, who will deliberately take this apart and examine it in relationship to the Illinois Constitution and the federal Constitution. The second thing I want to say, the Constitution and the Bible have been used to support the marginalization and the extermination of several populations. Black people are one of them. Before the Civil War, ministers got up and from the Bible preached divine right, that slaves could be owned because they were not capable of caring for themselves. And it was preached from pulpits, and it was interpreted not only through the Constitution, but through the Bible. So we are able to view these current events through whatever lens and belief we want. And so I would caution us that while we might have various different opinions of how that interpretation occurs, the law is in the courts, and the courts will give us direction on that. If they find this law to be unconstitutional, it will go back, and we will start over. The other thing I want to say is that in 1980, a group of us went to law enforcement and asked them to protect women living in homes where they were being beaten. And we couldn't get them to enforce the law. It was considered a private matter between a husband and wife that occurred within their home, which was out of the purview of law enforcement. So we passed, together with our legislators, after much work, the Illinois Domestic Violence Act in 1984, which created the Order of Protection. Sometimes states and courts have to do the right thing because we, at the people, don't do the right thing. And the right thing is to take a step in protecting the public good, not my good, but the common good of all the people. At the end of the day, and I want to say this to the gun community, you tell me what kind of management on these weapons will make a difference. What kind of standard do you want to set as gun owners to manage this weapon? Because I don't have the answer, but I want the answer. Tell me what it looks like. Rather than tell me about your right to own the gun, what are you willing to do as a gun community to step up and create a gold standard on who gets a FOID card, who gets access to weapons, and how you're going to manage and train that? I mean, my beautician has to be licensed by the state of Illinois, do continuing education before she can cut my hair, and be regulated by the Illinois Department of Professional Regulation. I would like gun owners to assure those of us who are frightened by guns, what will you do to assuage our fear? And in the meantime, if we can't do that, then we pass legislation. So I will not vote for this resolution because I don't think it has any bearing on the work that we do as county board members. But I have appreciated this process. So thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Ms. Wegner?
I have one. You know I'm voting no, but I think it's important here. If you look at, there's many different whereases here that say the county of McHenry. I don't think this should say the county of McHenry, because it is not the county of McHenry who is making this resolution. It is the county board. So I would like it changed to say the majority of the county board every time it says county of McHenry. I would like to make a motion on whereas 2, 4, 5, 8, and 12. The very beginning of those whereases, where it says the county of McHenry, to say the majority of the county board.
I second that motion. Ms. Van Hoff seconds.
I just think that would more accurately reflect what this resolution is standing for. Thank you.
Discussion on this amendment. Mr. Kearns?
Bull. We listened to a lot of people here tonight. It's not just the county board. Done.
Any further comments on this amendment? Seeing none, all in favor? Ms. Meshes?
Thank you so much. I mean, I think it was said by Matt last Thursday that clearly not all of the county does agree to this, that I was going to do a fast count of our public comment just tonight. I didn't do that count fast enough. Of how many, pardon?
21 to 16.
16.
21 people were against gun control, 16 people were in favor of gun control.
Okay, so you can hear what Member Gottemeller said. 21 people spoke against gun control. Well, we can't know how many, we can't know who's residents. Right.
Okay, Ms. Meshes has the floor. Please continue, Ms. Meshes.
Oh, thank you. I do think this resolution is being made to placate members of the community who are Second Amendment supporters. I think it's very upsetting to the members of our community who want to see meaningful action made about the gun violence issue. And I agree. This law doesn't do anything about suicides. It doesn't do anything about people who accidentally shoot themselves. It doesn't do anything about people who target their victims in a planned murder. But it does do something for the community members who are concerned that they can just become a random victim. And we're not doing anything to help them. We're not doing anything at all. And I think some of the rhetoric that's come from the public comment, some of the rhetoric that comes from our board members.
Can we keep this germane to the amendment?
It is. The germane part is this is not representative of what the county wants. If it was, we want to do that, then we can work to get a on the most applicable or soon as possible get something put out to the community on a vote. If you want to have a vote, we could work on that, get a referendum. But this doesn't represent the county. This is just to placate those who are concerned about Second Amendment. It doesn't do anything. It's just to add to the rhetoric. And I think the rhetoric is dangerous, and I think that if we're not going to do anything about the danger we all see, then that's to our personal conscience. Also, I also take offense when people think that this is an issue of us not understanding God. I don't know how many board members on the board are regular believers. I don't know how many of us are atheists, but I never had a break from my faith. I never took decades off. And God didn't give us guns. Those of you who are Christian know that God told you to turn a cheek. So, I mean, it's a misconstruction of the Bible when we talk about God gave us these guns.
Mr. Kearns?
I call the question on the amendment.
Okay, all in favor of calling the question?
May I speak, please?
He just called the question. It's not debatable. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carries. So we will vote on the amendment to change those words from county to county board.
To the majority of the county board.
Majority of the, okay. To the majority of the county board. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Against? Nay. Okay, motion does not carry. Back to the original motion on the resolution as a whole as presented. Mr. Kearns,
Call the question.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Okay. Clerk, could you open the voting, please? Voting is open. Have all voted who wish?
Is Member Altough on the line still?
Yes, she is.
Ms. Althoff, how would you like to be shown?
Yes, please.
That was a yes?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Motion carries. I will entertain a motion to approve item 13B, which is a resolution to amend the appointment of Regional Planning Commission and adopt the amended Regional Planning Commission bylaws with the purpose of producing the 2050 comprehensive plan. Mr. Gottemoller makes the motion, Mr. Smith seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, could you open the voting, please? Voting is open. Have all voted who wish?
Ms. Altoff?
Yes.
Motion carries. We'll move on to appointments. I'll entertain a motion to approve the appointments on item 14A, which are for the Hebron Drainage District, Michael Von Bergen, Regional Planning Commission, Ellie Fleming, Regional Planning Commission, Garrett Anderson, Regional Planning Commission, Perry Moy, and Ethics Commission, William Kernick. Mr. Kunkel makes the motion, seconded by Mr. Hendricks. Clerk, could you open the voting, please? Or any discussion? Sorry. Seeing none, clerk, could you open the voting, please? It's open. Voting is open. Have all voted who wish?
Ms. Altoff, how would you like to be shown?
Yes, sir.
Motion carries. I'll entertain a motion for recommendation for appointment to the Ethics Commission as of February 21st, 2023. The two individuals would be selected, one individual between Nicholas Feda and Mark Zelke. Ms. Campbell makes the motion, seconded by Ms. Ness.
Yes, I'm going to.
Right.
So I'd like to make the recommendation to appoint Nicholas Feda to the Ethics Commission as of February 21st, 2023 for,
So according to eScribe, we need to make an amendment to the originally, the resolution in the packet. So we're gonna make an amendment to that because there is no name on there. So, and you're recommending the amendment be for
Nicholas Feda.
Nicholas Feda.
Is this going to be a recorded vote or voice affirmation?
Appointments, we need to.
Parliamentarian, can we do this? I mean, are we voting to vote for either one of these two?
The way it's going to work, I believe, is if there's a motion to approve Mr. Feda, for instance, there'll be a vote on that. If it fails, then you would take a vote on Mr. Zolke.
I thought we were just bringing this up for discussion.
This is a motion to amend the document that's,
Like right here on the floor, we can amend it right on the floor and then vote for it without it being published as one name or the other? What do we want to put this in as discussion?
the names are published on the agenda itself.
You're right, okay.
So what we're voting
Just wanted a
is,
quick clarification.
what we'll be voting on is the amendment to the resolution that's in the packet. And if that passes, then we'll vote on the resolution, the amended resolution. We need a second for Ms. Campbell's motion. Ms. Mesh's. Discussion?
So is this for, for this actual appointment for Mr. Feda?
This is for the amendment to the resolution. If it passes, then we'll vote on the resolution itself, the amended resolution.
So we're, okay.
We're placing the name. If this is successful, the name will be placed on the resolution, then we will vote on the resolution.
So we have to get the name on, we're voting for the amendment, then we'll vote on the name.
Okay.
Do you want to speak to him?
I'm sorry.
Do you want
Okay.
to speak to?
Discussion. Ms. Campbell.
Oh, I get to first. No, I think I spoke last time at the Cow. I feel like he is a good candidate. He was filling a vacant spot already on the commission. He's gone through the training. We know that there is actually Not a lot that's done on the commission because we haven't had matters brought before them, which is not a bad problem to have at all. But he has gone through the process. I think he rose to the top. Everyone in interviewing the candidates said that they were all, wonderful candidates. And I think one of the things I think is important is that when somebody steps up to fill the rest of a term, as long as, all things being equal, give the person who's already been trained the opportunity to continue. We have this issue where we have a lot of great people coming. I think that's true of both candidates here on the table. And of course, there's always the opportunity to apply again. And because we have such great candidates coming forward on a regular basis, it's not unusual for candidates to take 2 and 3 times before they get appointed to one of our boards or commissions. So, thank you.
Ms. Meshes?
Thank you.
Oh, you turned yourself off.
I did myself off.
Turn it off, turn it back on again.
Gotta wait again? Is that what
You
you
can
said?
only have 4 active at a time.
Oh,
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I supported Nick Feta in the Admin Services Committee, and I continue to support his nomination to be on the Ethics Committee. I think that his training as a lawyer helps him with being able to follow the process. I think that there isn't any reason to think that he wouldn't have good ethical judgment. He is eager to serve, and I appreciate his experience, his work experience.
Ms. Greeno?
So I wanted to understand if this passes for Nick Feta, then does Mark Zupke automatically then become the appointee? I mean, if it fails, would Mark, I mean, we have to go back and then put
I think
Mark's
technically
name
we
on?
would have to make a motion to amend with Mr. Zelke's name if this fails.
Okay, so I would ask that we would vote no on this, and my reason is that our other appointee, William Kernick, is an attorney and also has a background in ethics, and I would like to see a diverse disciplines serving on the Ethics Committee, and God bless lawyers, but we don't need to have 2 appointments of 2 lawyers in this, and it's going to be coming up very soon, and we'll be able to have Mr. Feta on at that time.
Okay. Ms. Altoff?
Thank you. And with all due respect, had I realized that that was going to be a consideration by the full board, that somebody's professional background was a criteria, then I think the conversation when we made our first recommendation, where it was a gentleman who did not have the training, had not been before us, had the background of an attorney, maybe we would have had a different outcome.
Thank you. Ms. Wegner?
Thank you. I happened to be at this admin meeting. There were great candidates. Every single one of them would have been a good candidate. But I do want to bring up that there's been a precedent set. The last time we voted to appoint somebody to the Ethics Commission in 2020, there was a person who was up for reappointment. And there was a lot of discussion about this woman because she wrote letters to the editor. And the letters to the editor she wrote were all on national issues. But because she wrote letters to the editor, she was disqualified and not reappointed to this commission. So, and I'm not insinuating that anybody has done anything wrong, but I want to make sure that the appointment that we have to this commission is free of any controversy. And the person that's up now, Nicholas Feta, there is no controversy whatsoever. The other person has talked about campaigning. And I just want to make sure that we follow precedent and make sure that this person, there's no questions. And this is an ethics board. We have to remember it ethical. We need to make sure it all looks ethical and that we do the right thing. Thank you.
Ms. Ness?
Oh, no, that wasn't it.
Mr. Kearns?
Let's talk facts here about 2020 and the person who was called out for the different things. That was tabled to the next meeting, and that person had withdrawn their name. We did not vote on it. We didn't vote that person down. So there was no precedent set there. I think this is purely two great candidates, and it's just, let's get on with this. Let's vote. And we don't need to play politics here. Let's just vote up or down if you want this person or not. They're both great candidates, and it's just a matter of who wants to vote for who. So let's just do it.
Seeing no further discussion, clerk, could you open the voting?
It's open.
Voting is open. Have all voted who wish?
Ms. Altoff, how would you like to be shown?
Yes, please.
Motion does not carry. Mr. Shorten?
I'd like to make a motion to nominate or provide a recommendation for appointment to the Ethics Board for Mark Zulke.
So your motion is to amend the resolution and insert Mark Zelke's name.
Thank you, sir.
Seconded by Mr. Hendricks. Any discussion? Seeing none. Just typing as fast as he can. Alt X.
No, Mark Zelke.
Okay, voting is open. Have all voted who wish?
Hold on a second. Sorry, let's do it again. Cancel this and then start over. Sorry about that. Technical issues when I relaunched that vote. Okay, so now voting is open.
Now the voting is open. Have all voted who wish?
Ms. Altoff, how would you like to be shown?
Yes, excuse me, yes, please.
Okay, motion carries. We will now vote on the resolution itself with Mark Zelke's name or amended to reflect Mark Zelke. Any discussion? Ms. Ness?
So I want to be clear and ask a question. The Ethics Commission only reviews very specific narrow conduct. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. And so that includes sexual harassment, sexual assault. If you give me $500.
It's limited to the items in the
Okay.
ethics ordinance, right?
Okay, so it's actually a very legally driven three things, okay? So it's very legally driven in terms of how it conducts its investigations. Would that be correct? Evidence, people being questioned. I mean, if I were to do something, it would be like a legal process, correct? I mean, it would be according to the statutes that they are charged with enforcing and discovering whether I violated them.
Yes, the Ethics Commission has a very, very limited scope.
Yes.
And it has happened, you know, although all ethics charges are infrequent. It has happened almost as frequently as has not happened, that this is not, you know, a charge comes in that's not found to be, you know, part of the ethics ordinance or part of something that it is in the bailiwick of the Ethics Commission.
Because I want to be clear that this is not a morally driven process. I want to be clear about that this is an evidence-based investigation of a violation of our restricted purview of the Ethics Commission. I just want to be clear about that, because to me, that sounds like having strong legal practice on that commission would be good for us. That is, am I being clear? Maybe I'm not. It could be it's 10:15 and I'm old, you know, I'm usually in bed by this time, so it could be that I'm not. But it would appear to me that we are not asking a person to make subjective decisions. And so while I appreciate the idea of diversity, I also want to mention that one of the things we are working to engage in is having younger people involved in our committees and in county structure. And Nick Fettis is a younger man. I'm not being ageist, but I am saying he meets the criteria. Oh, Norm, did I make you cringe over there when I said that? Okay. It feels like he meets the criteria. He has the training. He's been on the commission. He's a public defender. So that's why I would be voting for him. He meets those criteria, so that different diversity. Thank you.
Mr. Smith.
The resolution is whether we be voting for the person that's named on the resolution at this time, and it has nothing to do with Nicholas Feda. Thank you.
Okay, and just to be clear, it's a little bit unclear up here. The mover and the seconder was Campbell and Meshes? No. Shorten and Hendricks.
Yes.
Sorry about that.
For the Second Amendment.
But for the opening discussion,
Now we're just voting for his name.
No, I think we need a.
Yes, the original mover was, yes.
Campbell and Meshes.
Correct.
That's what I thought.
That was the original mover on the motion to amend with Nicholas included in that. That failed, so you get rid of those original motioner and you have to go back to the new one, which was Mike and whoever else.
Mike and Eric. Okay, so you got it? Any further discussion? Seeing none, could you open the voting, please?
It's open.
This is for Mark Zelke. The whole thing, the amended resolution which placed Zelke on there.
Ms. Altoff, how would you like to be shown?
Yes, please.
Okay, motion carries. Do any standing committee chairpersons have updates or liaison have reports for us tonight? Mr. Reiner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was at the MCCD meeting, the McHenry County Conservation District. And just to give an update, they have been working on their budget for the last, I don't know how long, because this is only my third month with them, but for quite some time. And I reviewed it with the chair and also the administrator. And it seems to be that they're going to be putting that forward for finance, I believe, an audit for next month to be put on the agenda. Looks pretty good. They're obviously suffering like all of us are with their budgets. Also, they voted on a feasibility study at Lions Prairie and Marsh Conservation Area. That's pretty much Port Barrington area in the south part, for their repairing erosion issue. They have a bad erosion there, as everybody knows. The river is starting to, turn the mud down at that end. So they are going to be looking at doing a study on that to see what that'll cost. So kind of interesting stuff down there. And that's it.
Thank you. Ms. Altoff, do you have a report for us?
Thank you. Just for law and government, I'd like to remind all the committee members that we did reschedule the February 28th meeting to March 8th at 1 p.m.
Thank you. Mr. Kaminsky.
Yes, from the VAC. 2022, the VAC office prosecuted VA claims resulting in a new awards exceeding $3.8 million for a 4-year cumulative total for 2022 of $14.3 million for the vets. The VAC also wishes to thank the county HR department and its complete and up-to-date personal policy. The VAC used it as a template to be included in its own policy manual. The VAC policy manual is now being used as a model for other VACs in the state, so kudos to our HR department. As part of the Governor's Veterans Alignment Task Force, the committee submitted its report, provided annual solutions that Illinois can implement rather than a report that simply blames the VA for all problems. Thanks to the assistance of the county public relations personnel, the VAC was able to release 2 public service messages this year already. And that's all I got on the VAC. Thank you.
Ms. Campbell?
Okay, and I've got my phone out just because I'm trying to remember the times that these are. But so I liaison to the Emergency Management Agency, and Mike and I were at the Weather Spotters, which was very interesting, but I can't give you any detail because my mind is just going to explode here in a minute. Anyway, but it was very interesting. It was a great thing to do. Also in that liaison role, we're starting off, and Dave Christensen the director has talked to us before about starting up with the Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan update, which has been launched. The kickoff meeting was last month, and we'll be meeting again this Thursday at 1 p.m. It is important that we get as many of our municipalities represented. That would be great. We have great representation from the county. Everyone was there, so that was wonderful, but we want to encourage our municipalities to do the same. So that's Thursday at 1 at Cary Village Hall. Then we'll now be helping our liaisoning to the Regional Planning Commission, and we're going to have an organizational reset meeting this Thursday starting at 6. We have the expanded commission, so I know Mary Donner, who is the chair now, is anxious to get started, or restarted, so thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other reports, finally to the routine consent agenda. Do any members have items they'd like to remove from the routine consent agenda? Mr. Scala.
16B25, please.
Mr. Smith.
16B23.
Ms. Meshes.
16B12.
Any others? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the routine consent agenda less item 16B12, 16B23, 16B25. Mr. Scala makes the motion, seconded by Ms. Wegner. Clerk, could you open the voting, please? Voting is open. Have all voted who wish?
Ms. Altoff, how would you like to be shown? Ms. Altoff? Any sign of life? Okay, so no vote. No vote for her. Yeah.
What I did. I guess I have to put.
I'm sorry, I stepped away to use the washroom. I apologize.
What a luxury.
Yes.
Sorry. What am I missing?
Routine consent agenda, yes or no?
Oh, yes, please.
I think E-Scribe is getting tired. Here it comes. There it is.
Motion carries. Items removed. 16B12, Ms. Meshes.
I'll make a motion to discuss it. All right, done.
Okay, Ms. Meshes, you made the motion to, to approve. Mr. Gottemoller makes the second. Discussion.
I turned my mic on. I did support the flag flying display policy until we changed it to a 2/3 majority. I think it's unnecessarily confusing because this flag policy will, any flag that's going to come up is most likely going to come up on a proclamation, which only has to be approved by a majority. And putting it as a 2/3 majority isn't going to change the amount of discussion we would have on proposed flags. We would still see it. So the 2/3 is just an unnecessary confusion in my mind. And so I won't approve it as written, but I would make a motion to amend it, to make it, put it back to its original form where the 5th clause would say any ceremonial flags may only be displayed with the county board's approval through the passage of an ordinance, resolution, or proclamation, which shall include language in substantially the following form. The display of the ceremonial flag constitutes government speech by the county. Any ceremonial flag flown on county flagpoles are an expression of McHenry County government's official sentiment and represent McHenry County's support of what the flag represents. So that was a motion I made.
So you're removing the 2/3.
Yes.
Is there a second? Ms. Ness makes the second. Discussion. Ms. Greeno.
Yes, I defer back to Ms. Campbell's comment last Thursday. You cannot pass a resolution that implies that it represents everybody. And what we were trying to do in the administrative committee was to have a policy that would represent as many as possible. It's a difference of 2 votes on this board. It's not something that's insurmountable. We're going from 10 to 12. And it would show a unanimous, I'll say that word at 10:25. But, and that was the purpose of it, and I do believe that it's important to keep the 2/3.
Mr. Scala.
So I'm looking for a point of clarification from the motioner.
Yes.
What, so you didn't specify in the words that you used what you wanted. So am I assuming then that it's, I don't want to put words in your mouth, so I'm trying to understand, same question I had asked Mr. Gottemoller when we were here on Thursday, is, so are you looking for a simple majority of those present, or a simple majority of board members? What do you, I need clarification before I can decide on your motion. Thank you.
I would say simple majority of board present, which I think is typical for most of our resolutions and proclamations.
So you're replacing 2/3 with simple.
I am replacing 2/3 of simple, yes.
Thank you.
That's the motion. And the seconder, I'm assuming, agrees with that as well? I do. Okay. Discussion, Ms. Campbell.
Yeah, I'm just, I guess I don't remember exactly what I said, so I want to make sure. Well, yeah, I'll go back and look, and that's fine. I'm just, in this context,
I know that, so.
Ms. Campbell has the
we
floor.
apologize. Yes,
Let's,
thank you.
Move forward.
Thank you. Yes, I do know that. It's recorded sometime, don't remember the context in in which I said it. And so I'm not sure if the appropriateness of using that as a way to go one way or the other. I understand the need to, most resolutions we pass are majority, and we have certain provisions, state law, or federal law that requires more than that, or maybe when we're overturning, zoning, a lot of issues that come before the zoning board that might trip something higher. So not completely sure, I'll go back and look, but we have operated with majority rule for most of our ordinary ordinances. So thank you.
Ms. Wegner.
Thank you. I agree with Ms. Campbell, and I do want to disagree with Ms. Greeno because she said that we need 2/3 vote to show that we're representing everyone. If we look at a vote we took this evening opposing HB 5471, this was my majority vote. And the majority vote said the county of McHenry. I specifically asked to have an amendment to say the majority of the McHenry County Board because this resolution did not represent everyone on the board. And it was overruled, and I'm sure she voted no to the amendment. So, like Ms. Campbell says, we have a lot of things that are just passed with majority. I think this is something that we could have with a majority. We don't need the severity of having the amount of people to suspend the rules to approve a flag, and that's what it would be.
Mr. Reiner.
Okay, so it's late, so I'll try to make this kind of clear. Because it's kind of hard to get my thoughts clear on this one. But, I support a lot of special interests. Every year we do the Motorcycle Awareness Month, the Gay Pride, I understand. I personally struggle with personal interest flags on our government flagpoles of any kind. I think that there's a spot for them, but I don't think they should be under the American flag or, the MIA flag. And I don't mean to disparage anyone. I just want to make sure everyone knows I'm not in any way homophobic or racist, or I'm just a little bit more conservative on this one. So, if we are going to pass it, I would say I would like to see a supermajority because, quite honestly, I just don't think that the subject is the right matter to be putting on our flagpoles. So it's my opinion that it would be a supermajority if we are going to do it. Make sure that the majority of us feel that strongly about it. Thank you.
Ms. Van Hoff.
Yes, and I just want to reiterate, and I got a letter, and I'm sure several other members of the board got this letter too, and it really expresses the way I feel about this. I think we're using a supermajority because the board is really wanting to prevent the pride flag from being flown. That is the issue here at hand. And I got a letter that really kind of reinforces my views. And the writer says, I'm reaching out to you to address 2 issues before you during the Tuesday, February 21st, 2023 board meeting. The first is a resolution to require 2/3 majority vote for the flying of flags. And the second resolution for February to be recognized as Black History Month. Outside of such serious issues like overriding vetoes, proposing amendments, removing people from office, and the like, the use of a supermajority is often, if not always, used for retribution, retaliation, or other political stunts. One that is often motivated by spite and fear. Does the flying of these flags, which no one is required to pledge allegiance to, really deserve to be at the level of seriousness that requires a supermajority? Is this really the precedent we want to set here? That those in charge look out only for the majority interests After all, majorities have a way of changing over time. And I might add to that, we don't know what the majority is. All we know are the people who come and speak to us. But outside of the people who come to speak to us, we get phone calls, we get emails, and I have to tell you, I have gotten just as many, if not more, emails from people going the other way on the HB 5471 on supporting that. So we can't pretend, and I really would like to reiterate that I don't want to be a member of, I don't want to be known as someone who is supporting that. And so we could not change that resolution. We voted not to change that to the majority of the board. And here we're requiring a supermajority for something that is not necessarily used for a supermajority. And I need to ask for some clarification here, because my understanding is that a supermajority will still require 12 votes, even if those members are present. That's different from a 2/3 majority. So what is the clarification here? That question was asked at the last meeting at the COW, and it was not answered. Are we talking about a 2/3 majority, or are we talking about a supermajority?
The resolution says 2/3 majority.
Okay, so let's stop calling it a supermajority, and I really think I will vote against this, because I believe that a simple majority would be sufficient for that. Thank you.
Ms. Greeno.
It's well put, such serious issues. This is an issue of us having a policy that addresses the 2 Supreme Court rulings this summer that were unanimous. And it says that what we put on government property is government speech. It's not a resolution, it is a policy. In our committee meeting, we specifically stated the number 12. And again, to act like this is about any specific group or flag trivializes this process and demeans what this board is doing. It's very serious, and we need to have a good, solid policy.
Should we discuss the amendments?
Mr. Kunkel.
When I proposed this initially, it didn't have line 5 at all. I was tired of the time we waste, people's time, government money, our time debating flags that we know, as sure as we're all sitting here, whatever flag we raise, it's gonna upset half the people and half the people are gonna like it. And that's probably a skew, it's probably not 50-50. I simply said I wanted a 2/3 super majority to try and bend a little on my 4 points only. I still believe we should have the state, the federal, and our county flags. That's all. I gave a little with the 2/3 supermajority. That was the reason. And it was for precisely this, that we don't waste everybody's time debating flags that we know is gonna upset people.
Mr. Shorten.
I concur with Member Kunkel, and I'd like to make a motion to further amend to strike item 5 from the flag policy. I think it.
Let's get through this amendment first, and if you want to make that motion, you go ahead. Mr. Hendricks.
So just real briefly, in the Administrative Committee, Services Committee, I know many members wanted a simple majority, many members wanted nothing flown other than the, local government, military flag, or government and military flags. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Gottemauer pointed out that rules can be suspended with a 2/3 vote. So the 2/3, it shifted from there's going to be no say in the matter to that there will be no ceremonial flags to 3/4, and then when it was pointed out by Mr. Gottemoller that no matter what we do on the policy, the rule could be suspended and we could lower it, which would only require 2/3 to change it. We simply went with and recommended the 2/3 majority vote, essentially because that's what it's going to be regardless, and that cuts out a step of the process instead of voting to suspend the rules and then vote on the flag. So I would support the 2/3 because while I personally don't want any flag flown other than the government and military flags, it wouldn't matter. There would be a motion to suspend the rules, there'd be a vote on it, that would require the same 2/3. So this just kind of streamlines the effort. So I'd ask that the 2/3 be supported.
Mr. Kaminsky.
I'm inclined to favor the 2/3, but I'd like to remind my fellow board members that where we're thinking about the flag and the flags out in front, that is a Vietnam War memorial. And I'm in concurrence with others that the only flag is the U.S., state, and county. But that's a war memorial for the 32 Vietnam veterans that gave their all for our county. Thank you.
Ms. Ness?
Well, there's no way for me to extrapolate this conversation in a way that's meaningful so that we can actually expose what's underneath the conversation. So I'm not going to do it. And the comment about appropriate subject in reference to the pride flag is offensive to me. I want to be clear about that. In addition to that, what I said the other night at the Cow, this is the people's house, and you can't have we the people talking to us in public comment about people's rights and people's access. And then in this situation, we don't let we the people choose. So if we're going to do it over here, then we're going to do it over here because it's equal. It might be harder on us. It might be more demanding on us. But if your norms and tradition on this board are simple majority votes for most vote, I consider the HB 5471 a very serious vote, then that is what I would like to see happen in this situation. That would be, as a person speaking on behalf of the LGBTQI community, that would be my request. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the amendment?
I'm just, so to clarify, what we are going to vote on right now is the amendment to change it to simple majority, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Strike 2/3, insert simple majority. All in favor say aye. Aye. Against? Nay. Roll call.
Here it comes. It's open.
Voting is open. Have all voted who wish?
Ms. Althoff, how would you like to be shown? Ms. Althoff?
Mic is off.
Third request, Ms. Althoff?
Motion does not carry. So, back to the original resolution. Any discussion? Seeing none. Could you open the voting, please?
It's open.
Voting is open. Have all voted who wish? Mr. Smith is not open.
You can do it verbally, I guess.
Anyone else?
Mr. Smith, how would you like to be shown? Yes. Oh, there it is. All right.
Do you want to give?
Ms. Althoff? Ms. Altoff? Ms. Altoff,
Yes, yes,
how do you wish to be shown?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Motion carries. Next, I will entertain a motion to approve item 16B23, resolution authorizing an intergovernmental agreement between McHenry County and McHenry-Lake County Soil and Water Conservation District for the purpose of obtaining wetland services. Mr. Smith
Thank you.
makes the motion.
I'd like to make a motion to send this back to committee for further review to date certain, April 4th, PED meeting. We're working with staff to get a meeting together with staff and the stakeholders to consider revising the current policy regarding this contract.
Do we have a second? Mr. Kearns? Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Against? Motion carries. Got it? Next, I will entertain a motion for item 16B25, resolution authorizing approval of grants awarded from McHenry County's allotment of the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 and emergency appropriation to the 2023 fiscal year budget. Ms. Meshes. I'll make the motion. Makes the motion. Second, Mr. Shorten. Any discussion? Mr. Scala.
So at your place, you have a modification to the resolution based on the discussion on Thursday, which basically takes out. What? You don't, I'm the only one that has it? Well, hey, sorry about that, guys. So this was the discussion that we had on Thursday that we'd like to send the Sage YMCA request back to committee. So, sorry y'all don't have the red line version, but basically it's the same exact resolution. It just removes Sage YMCA and the $680,000 that was requested from them in regard to the ARPA, and it changes all the 5 items to 4 projects and throughout the resolution. So I guess my motion would be to accept the red line version with the removal of Sage and moving Sage back to Finance and Audit for further discussion.
Motion, Ms. Meshes makes that second. Any discussion?
Yeah, I would just like to ask for clarification, Mr. Scala. SAGE was the highest scoring organization that made a presentation to us. And I think that you said something about viability, but can you be specific in here about what the issue is? Because I just don't understand why we're dragging it out for SAGE, that's all.
So at committee, there were several questions in regard to the sustainability and the funding. And committee members had asked SAGE to provide more information. SAGE did provide another amendment to the original write-up, and I personally feel like that amendment caused even more questions in regard to the request. And so instead of just basically not voting on it and dismissing them, I would like to give them an opportunity to come back to the committee and further clarify the things that the committee had asked for. Other committee members can chime in, but I feel like that's in the best interest of the request.
Ms. Meshes?
I agree. I believe that we probably would grant Sage YMC some money in the future, but at this point, even at the meeting, our finance meeting, I was hesitant to support it going to the board because I had a lot of questions about how the $680,000 was going to be determined for payouts, given that they're looking at spending as written, as their proposal's written, the way I interpret it, was that they are talking about spending $1,700 per child to go to camp, and that felt like an excessive amount of money for one kid. So I think that I probably will support them getting some money in the future, but the $680,000 seems too much, given for what their project entails. So if we're not going to support it going back to committee to discuss, I'll then have to come up with an amount that I think is more appropriate than $680,000 at this moment.
Mr. Hendricks.
Just a point of clarification, was it approved in committee? No. Okay, that's it.
No, that's not true. I mean, it was approved to come to the board pending further information that Sage was to provide to us. So multiple committee members had questions, but were willing to move it forward to the board. And we were very clear with Sage that please provide the information, and if the board deems at the meeting here that that information either wasn't adequate or that we still had questions, that we would then give them the opportunity to answer those at the next committee meeting. So we were very clear to them that that's the process, and so that's kind of where we find ourselves.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Campbell.
Yeah, I just feel I think there were enough questions after we got the additional information to make this wholly appropriate that we review it further.
Any further discussion? Seeing none. So this is just an amendment, and then we'll vote on it overall, right? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Against? Okay. Back to the amended resolution. Need a mover?
I have Meshes and Short.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Clerk, could you open the voting, please?
It's open.
Voting is open. Have all voted who wish?
Ms. Van Hoff? Waiting for your vote, Ms. Van Hoff? Oh, okay. I didn't know if
Yeah,
you-
I just need some clarification. Are we voting not to send this back to committee?
We already did that. The Sage is going back to committee. The other ones on here are included for approval right now.
Ms. Altoff, how would you like to be shown?
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Last item for tonight, I'll entertain a motion to approve an ordinance for action 17B1, ordinance amending the district boundaries of the McHenry County Stormwater Management Commission. Mr. Kearns makes the motion, Mr. Gottemoller seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, could you open the voting, please?
Okay, I guess everyone already voted, huh?
Is it open? Oh,
Did everyone place a vote? Okay.
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 Just didn't see it.
Ms. Altoff?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, motion carries. Pete?
Senator Desk.
Entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Scala, seconded by Ms. Von Bergen. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Against? Have a good night.
So
I'm not saying.